to any attack on them from Russia. Ross Cullen, Paris.
And that's the Week in Review. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
A new medical study on the effects of marijuana use confirms that everyone knows you're high and that you'll never stop feeling like this.
Everyone can smell the marijuana on your breath and on your clothes. Everyone is laughing at you.
Additionally, the in-depth report reveals that despite trying to act cool, you're definitely laughing too much and everyone is messing with you.
Your parents know you're high. Your friends know you're high. Strangers on the street know you're high. If you're young and you smoke marijuana, you will probably never be able to find a job. And if you're an adult, you will most likely be fired. If you hear a noise, that's probably the police, and you're probably going to jail.
While previous studies suggested that it's all good and that we're all made of the same stuff that makes stars, new research indicates that your brain got broken and you shouldn't have done this. Doctors say the study raises important questions such as, what if that wasn't just marijuana and how are you going to get home?
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control. That means you can call 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160 to get in on the conversation with us. And tonight on Free Talk Live, you've got me, Bonnie.
Jay, Bear Arms.
So tonight we have Bear Arms. You've been on before with us, but you haven't been on in a while. Jay, you also haven't been on in a while, but I'm pretty sure our audience mostly knows you because you've been on multiple times or many times. And I just wanted to say it's like we're not having like a interview, but we have Bear Arms on to talk about a specific thing. But you can also call in with your questions.
Yeah.
And we can talk about other subjects too. I wanted to have Jay on with us tonight because I felt like Jay, like you have looked more into tax stuff than most of the other hosts. And the book that you wrote, Bear, is about, what is it called? Lawful tax avoidance? I didn't want to use
LawfulTaxAvoidance.com.
Okay, so that's where you can find the book?
Yeah, LawfulTaxAvoidance.com. And just click on the link and you'll have the book.
And so your opinion is that Roger Ver, I guess we can just get right into that.
Sure.
He probably could win this just based on what you have found out about the tax code if he fires his lawyers.
I believe he can win any case, or any person can win a case if they truly allow the truth to come out, right? If the jury knows the truth, then you're probably going to win. Because in this case, like I say in my Lawful Tax Avoidance book, the federal income tax is the tax on federal income. Mm-hmm. It is not the federal tax on income, and it'd be a very hard thing for the prosecutor to prove to prove the latter. And so, if he just walked up to the jury and in his opening statement he says to the jury, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in the following evidence, you will hear that the federal income tax is the federal tax, is the tax on federal income, and not." The federal tax on income, and say it in a way that's convincing to the jury, that will light a fire in the jury's mind. That will let them see the truth over the course of the resulting litigation, and he would not be convicted. All right, but the problem is he needs to be able to bring up that statement, and it may be tricky. Mm-hmm. If he actually gets to that level. Or rather that stage. On the other hand, it could be that he could expose these simple truths, and file what they call a notice of affirmative defense under Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, Rule 12. and he can file that defense and potentially have it dismissed because the prosecutor does not want that fact to be exposed because it will just ruin their entire prosecution. See what I mean?
Yes.
I mean, there are several reasons why prosecutors don't prosecute. One is they don't have enough evidence. Two is they don't care. For example, like
somebody they don't want to prosecute, like a cop did a crime,
exactly.
they just don't want to prosecute it or something.
And three, if by prosecution it will reveal something of their own of their own fraud, of their own extrinsic fraud. Extrinsic fraud, by the way, is a very important thing that anybody looking into this might want to look into, and that's different from intrinsic fraud. And that's in Rule 60 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. So the government is guilty of extrinsic fraud because they are hiding from the jury the fact that the federal income tax is merely the tax on federal income and not the federal tax on income. And by not fully disclosing that, they are committing a crime. They're committing the crime of a Sixth Amendment violation, which is the right to be fully informed. You see what I mean?
The Sixth Amendment covers speedy trial.
Speedy trial,
so all
that
court
stuff. Right.
Your right to counsel at your election.
Right.
And so if you wanted to maybe just turn me up a hair, Bonnie, behind you up there.
I think it might be that you're turned.
Oh, okay.
Your
that's much
headphones are
better.
turned down. Is that better? You can hear us? Because.
So anyways, Roger Veer's attorney told me that she is a listener of Free Talk Live.
Whoa.
So there's a good chance that she might hear what you got to say tonight. I actually talked to her when I was at Anarchapulco.
Wow, cool.
I have nothing to say which I cannot prove according to the Constitution, their statutes, or the Supreme Court decisions. But nothing I say will be accepted by normal attorneys because they're not allowed to kind of give these truths right out to the public.
Their agreement with the bar or something.
Or whatever it is. I don't know. I don't know what their deal is. I'm not an attorney. I merely study the law, and I found these truths on my own research, and it's the same ones that other people have found over the many years. And based on the experience of tens of thousands of people, they have not been prosecuted. They have gotten all their money back. And like I've been saying earlier, in 2016, when I did what I call an honest tax return, the IRS gave me back all my money plus interest, which is unheard of, right? And I'm not the only one that's had this happen. Many people are finding this out, and the government will eventually move away from this fraudulent tax scheme into something else, because we're figuring it out, right? So that's why we hear all these new tax schemes about an indirect tax or a usage tax or tariffs or whatever they have. Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you. Yeah, and there's there's multiple ways to skin a cat.
Oh yeah.
So I want to say that the way that you're going about this, I believe, is a good way to deal with this particular issue. And there's a handful of other people who have similar strategies there, in dealing with the IRS. Like Christopher Gronsky says, getting yourself out of the federal zone. And he was actually a presenter at Anarchapulco, did a really good presentation down there. And a lot of your stuff isn't too far from his stuff. A little different, but from what I understand and what I've seen from people, both of these processes have worked for lots of people.
Right. The key is to get the truth out to the jury, or do it in such a way that it will allow the truth to come out during some form in the litigation, and that will prevent the prosecutor from probably moving forward. That would be my initial tactic in this.
Would you say that once you get to court, then you have a pretty, you have just as much of a chance as Ian? The thing is, he had a lawyer. I understand that, but after his case was put out there and it's in the jury's hands, they never had any of the things covered that you're supposed to have covered to convict somebody of tax. and they just did anyway. It's like they did reverse jury nullification.
Correct.
And I guess like at that point, all you can really do is try to be the most likable person, the most honest person.
Well, here's the thing too: is most jurors are pretty stupid.
Yeah,
is really the bottom line. I mean, they are
most people,
and most people are actually pretty stupid, and people in general are getting dumber and dumber and dumber as time goes on because a lot of them are becoming algorithmic slaves. They're becoming lazy, incompetent. Mm-hmm. The incompetence is a huge thing that we have going on, and a lot of these, people who are picked for jury duty. First off, they're not smart enough to get out of jury duty. And second
they're
off,
more likely to be.
They're most likely government employees.
Well, I have to disagree in some respect because, having studied this, I find that your ultimate salvation is with the jury. Mm-hmm. And so if you're going to make enemies with
it.
Sure, I know.
I'm not saying make enemies with the jury. I'm just, pointing out some things here. I've seen where, there's a Supreme Court justice who's famously quoted for saying, any competent lawyer can indict a ham sandwich.
But that's a grand indictment stage. It's different from a petite trial where you bring out all the evidence. All right, and
sure.
And let me tell you, having stood in front of a 12-man jury for a victimless crime of not having a license while bearing arms, mm-hmm. I can tell you that the jury is more than likely to be on your side as a person who has not done anything wrong, mm-hmm. because people are still sympathetic to each other. But you need to present, or the defendant needs to present himself, because if he doesn't establish a relationship during the jury selection process, the jury's not going to really have any feelings, positive or negative, towards him in general. And in general, the government does a pretty good presentation, so they have an edge over you.
They're professionals and they do it all the time.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you can't trip them up.
Sure.
For example, if in fact the prosecutor, it could be his worst enemy. For example, if the prosecutor said, you got $100 million of income this year, and you didn't report any of it. And then, or you said, we know that you've got this much income over this year. But what do you say to that? Then you say, well, isn't it true that the way you know about that income is through this form, and it's called a W-2 or a 1099 or some other information return? Isn't that true?
Well, how do you ask them something like that if you're the one being... You'd have to have them on the stand?
No, they're asking you the question. When they ask you a question, you say... You could say, I don't really know, because you know what? Show me where it says that I received income. And then the prosecutor will bring out his form and says, look, this is your W-2.
The judge says, hey, you're not asking the questions.
Well, because the judge is there. The judge is your enemy. And he is there to make sure the IRS wins. That is his only purpose.
That may be correct, but there are certain things they cannot smooth over. For example, the prosecutor says, we have this form and it says you made this much money. And you say, well, that form's not even signed. That violates rules of evidence 901 and 902 for authentication. So I don't know what you're talking about. Who authenticated this? How do you know this information
and the judge
is true?
will say, that's irrelevant. Get out of here.
But the jury will not.
Maybe. But all right? I think that stuff will go right over the jury's head.
No, it won't. Because the jury... Believe it or don't, is your best friend. I've been there. I stood in front of a jury.
I have also.
And I liked my jury. They acquitted me, okay? And the reason they acquitted me was because I didn't do anything bad.
They convicted you of doing when you did nothing bad? Because that's what happened to my husband, and also in front of me.
Right, but the thing is, what I keep stressing is that you must go there with positive vibes. You got to think that the jury is working for you. You got to go there and make that personal relationship with the jury.
It's
Ian
almost
testified.
I'm not saying it's easy,
but it's almost impossible to make that personal relationship if you have a lawyer.
So that's why you cannot have a lawyer. And by the way,
they're enemy spies. But they're enemy spies as far as I'm concerned, and nobody knows your case better than you.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's right.
And I wasn't there to watch Ian's trial, but I believe in my heart he would have done way better not having an attorney and just not having someone represent him, but him there defending himself.
Yeah.
And he had lots of practice because he's done lots of stuff without.
Yeah, but not in
lawyers.
federal. Like there were tons of things that we would have never been able to figure out like there were tons of things that there was no way for us to just be able to learn while also having like jobs and things to do with our lives.
That's tough. But let me tell you this.
It's not the same as just district court. It's so much more
from my own
complicated.
experience, and this is my own experience being in the superior court of a state, I made the mistake of not bringing out affirmative defenses, and I had like a whole list of them, like 5 or 6 of them. And on the day of trial, the judge said you can't use any of your affirmative defenses
Because I didn't previously you, or like declare you're going to.
Right. So actually, I did, but they didn't give me credit for it. Okay, I did it through a motion to dismiss where I raised some of those issues, but they said, "Oh, well, you need a specific notice for it," and I think that's legally wrong. But anyway. During that trial, even though I was not able to use any of my affirmative defenses, I was able to convince the jury not to convict me, all right? And the reason is because I established a personal relationship. I conveyed to them that I'm not a bad person, I did not harm anyone, and that I did what I did according to the knowledge which I had in knowing that I had a right to bear arms, and that's what I was doing. And so forth.
I think it's great, and I'm glad that you were able to, but I just know, based on just living in the world with other humans, that there are some people that could totally end up in your jury who don't care what the truth is. They are mad at you because you're not paying taxes, and I pay taxes, and there are literally signs on the side of the road in New Hampshire, the place people try to convince me is the most already peace-loving and government-hating state, that say things like, I pay my taxes, so you better pay yours. I've seen it in Peterborough.
But you can kick those out if you're selecting
You can't necessarily kick out every single one.
You can.
No, you can't. In federal court, Ian only got 8, and the prosecution got 6.
That's plenty of people. Trust me, because
it might not be, because one of the people on the case said he didn't like Bitcoin, and one of the people on the case said she didn't like free staters.
And so he could have gotten rid of them.
I think they're called 8 people.
Preemptory, whatever.
8, not unlimited.
Not unlimited, but enough.
It obviously wasn't enough. Ian's in prison.
I get it. I'm not saying this is easy. I ain't saying, right, this is a difficult thing, but the more knowledge you have and the more balls, guts you have to actually fight it, the more difficult it is to fight from their side to fight you.
Yeah.
And this is why you should practice.
Right.
Traffic tickets, parking tickets,
right.
Whatever. And even doing role play. One of the things that was really awesome when I was in my 20s, my teens and my 20s, my dad, Spud Noon, up at the farm, he would, once a month, we would be having these courtroom role play get-togethers, and somebody would bring some pizzas up and and a few beers, and a bunch of us would, somebody would pretend being the attorney, someone pretend being the prosecutor, the lawyer.
That's fun. That's awesome.
But I wanted to back up a little bit about in the beginning of the show, we kind of opened up with why prosecutors don't prosecute, or they'll just drop charges, and many times I've had prosecutors. When I was, in Massachusetts, I was doing a lot of activism, and I was getting harassed a bunch, and I had prosecutors we call the jury trial. Right after we call the jury trial, a prosecutor says, I'll dismiss this if you plead guilty to, this like low nothing charge and pay a $25 fine. And I'm like, nope, not doing it. And I was facing like 10 years in prison, on all these, basically inaccurate, improperly written tickets, essentially, is what they all were as far as I was concerned. And anyways, and then they call my name, to go do this basically jury trial. No, for jury trial. Prosecutor stands up. We're going to dismiss the case.
Nice. So don't take the plea deal.
But that happened multiple times with me, to where they just keep on pushing it right to the end, and I got my witnesses. But here's the thing. If you're a tough nut to crack, or you're not low-hanging fruit, they're not exactly interested in messing with you. But if they're bringing lawfare against you, which is exactly what's happening with Roger Veer, and Ian, and Ross Ulbricht, and a whole bunch of free staters, where these guys literally just go all out, and they just keep doubling down because nothing happens to them.
Speaking of that, there is a conspiracy that seems to have a lot of merit to it that they won't let free staters on juries once they know they're a free stater, because
absolutely.
In 1 year, 3 people that I knew got that are free staters, that are known free staters, not somebody who's like down low and nobody knows about them, got jury summons, and then got a letter or a call, don't remember because it was 2021, before even going to jury duty saying, never mind, don't come.
And
who else has ever had that happen at all?
So that your point is, a corollary to your point is, it's good to be on a jury if you know what you're doing, and it's good to have people like us or friends of us getting on the jury. So
yeah, but what if they're purposely kicking us out, like people think? And I'm not the only one.
I understand they're trying to kick us out, but our game should be to get as many like-minded people onto the jury as possible.
I agree.
You see what I mean?
But the thing is we don't pick the jurors. Who picks the jurors? Who picks the jury pool?
It's a combination of chance of your choice and their choice.
So you don't think that there could possibly be an algorithm that they could use to scan all the social media to make sure that they're not putting potentially people who are awake and aware and understand their rights?
I think there may be, but you also get a sheet of the potential juror of what they do and how old they are, where they live, and all that. So you get to review some of that basic information.
But those are people that make it to that stage. I'm talking about them kicking out people before that stage.
Well, I understand that. But they can't screen out everybody, no matter what algorithm they use, right? First of all. And secondly, I'm not convinced exactly. I'm not 100% convinced that there is any significant algorithm in that regard. I'm not saying that there isn't, okay?
That's why I called it a conspiracy theory. There's not it's like facts, but me in a very, I want to say high up free stater, very well known free stater who isn't known to mess around with silly things. Right. She was telling me that lots of people agree and have had similar experiences where they got mysteriously told not to come to jury duty.
You know what? I agree that kind of thing can happen, but the idea of not signing up for jury duty or trying to avoid jury duty,
definitely, if you can,
only shoots you and us in the foot. Now think about.
I love that. That's a good point.
Yeah, and also let's ask ourselves, what is the jury? The jury is the people, and the only thing that's higher than people is God Himself. Right? So when you are
some people are the devil.
That's true.
Some people are scum.
That's true. But a jury's decision is final. No matter what the court or the judge or whatever they say, if the jury says, you know what, I'm not going to convict, there's nothing they can do about it. So you have the ultimate kind of joker card in your hand. You understand? So to be selected for jury service is almost like an assignment, a summons, like from God, if you will, because it's random in most regards.
That's how I would take it. I would love to be on a jury.
Exactly.
Any jury.
So I know someone that works in Massachusetts Highway Department.
Yeah.
And she does basically human resources, and she says constantly her biggest reason for people calling out of work is jury duty.
Oh, yeah.
And
that's kind of sad.
And same thing with the school teachers. They get jury duty like crazy. No, the highway department are all government employees.
Oh,
they essentially want bootlicking government employees on these juries. And
people who are probably getting paid anyway.
And that's true, because when I remember seeing my jury list, and I want to say at least a third of them were either police officers or spouses of police officers. It was a large percentage, right?
No one who's married to or is a police officer is my peer. That's the opposite of my community, my peers. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. More Free Talk Live coming up, so don't go anywhere. You can call 603-283-6160. I like this conversation we've got going on, so if you'd like to get in on the conversation, you can call in 603-283-6160. More Free Talk Live coming up.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Rising fees have made Bitcoin useless for purchases, but Dash continues to have fees less than 1 cent per transaction, and its features ensure Dash is undefeated as the most useful cryptocurrency in the marketplace. From a technical standpoint, Dash transactions are irreversible, and its network is protected from 51% attacks by their Chainlocks technology. There's no need to wait for a confirmation before considering a Dash transaction complete, so it's great for merchants. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Big thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. At least 144 people have been killed and more than 730 injured after a major earthquake hit Myanmar and neighbouring Thailand. Myanmar's military government has warned the death toll is expected to rise. Dozens of people are trapped, including construction workers in Bangkok, where a high-rise that was under construction collapsed. Evason's Laura Westbrook reports.
On Friday afternoon, a 7.7 magnitude quake hit the northwest city of Sagaing in Myanmar at a shallow depth, according to the United States Geological Survey. A 6.4 magnitude aftershock hit the same area minutes later. There are reports buildings have fallen onto their sides, roads cracked open, and the well-known Ava Bridge has collapsed near the epicenter. Across the border in Thailand, where earthquakes are rare, the powerful tremors sent residents across many cities flooding into the streets in panic. In Bangkok, a 30-story building under construction has collapsed, and that's trapped dozens of workers. The quake prompted Thai Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra to declare a state of emergency in Bangkok, where some metro and light rail services have been suspended, but the airport is operating as normal.
A US judge has ordered the Trump administration to preserve messages that were part of a group chat on the app Signal. Officials, including the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, accidentally included a journalist in their discussions about airstrikes in Yemen. US District Judge James Boasberg has ordered the preservation of the messages that detailed attack plans on the Yemen-based Houthis group. It follows a lawsuit filed by a left-leaning group, American Oversight, demanding clarification on whether the officials violated federal record-keeping laws. Ukraine's president says the United States is constantly changing the details of a proposed minerals deal. The new proposal reportedly offers no long-term security guarantees for Ukraine, but ties it to a joint investment fund from the income of all its natural resources. Evason's William Denslow reports from Kiev.
US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has suggested this minerals deal could be signed as early as next week. But while noting that he's not necessarily against the proposal, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said Thursday that Washington kept changing the terms of what he calls a major new deal. The current plan reportedly contains no security guarantees for Kyiv, something the country has repeatedly called for. But the US maintains that an economic partnership and increased footprint in the country would act as a deterrent against Russia.
Britain's King Charles has cancelled public engagements this Friday after experiencing side effects from his cancer treatment. He spent a short period in hospital on Thursday for observation. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. And I'd like to thank Moon for being an amplifier with us here at Free Talk Live. That means that Moon went to amps.freetalklive.com and signed up to support the show. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. Thanks to Moon and everybody who supports us. And again, that's amps.freetalklive.com if you'd like to check out the perks and benefits of becoming an amplifier. So thank you so much to Moon, and we appreciate all of our amplifiers. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
Jay Noon,
and Bear Arms.
And we started talking generally about this topic of lawful tax avoidance, and Barry have a book that people can read on lawfultaxavoidance.com. And I I wanted to get into some of like your main points from your book, things you wanted to share.
Yeah.
Like we don't have the ability to just read it on the air, and I know
Right.
you don't want to, but let's talk about it.
Yeah, so the main point is that, well, there are several points. First point is that, the federal income tax is more accurately referred to as the tax on federal income. If you don't have federal income, you don't have a tax on federal income. That's the first point. The second thing is that the tax code and the regulations that come with it is somewhere around 6 or 7 million words. There's no way you can ever get through all of it. But let me tell you, there's 3 words, or 3 or 4 words, depending on how you count them, that control the entire Internal Revenue Code. And those words are property, income, service, and source. Property means government property. It means property belonging to the United States at Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. And it's different from private property, which you cannot be deprived of without due process of law, nor can it be taken for public use without just compensation. So whenever the tax code refers to property, they mean government property. For example, Bitcoin. Bitcoin is defined or referred to in Notice 2014-21, I believe, the IRS notice, and it says, virtual currency shall be treated as property.
Oh my God.
So yeah, if you have Bitcoin and it's not from the government, guess what? It's not property. It's private property. And there is no tax on that, and you can keep it. Okay?
Wait, so if they wrote that it's property and they mean it like
it
it's their
shall be
property,
treated as property.
and they mean that like if it came from them, then it's
Right.
their
And
property, but if it didn't, then it's just
Correct.
private property. Well, how do you know how they're using it in that moment?
You read the IRS 1040 instructions, and it says on the very top, it says, did you receive did you receive virtual currency for the exchange of property or for services? Right? That's what it says. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. But did you receive virtual currency for property or services? Because what's the other word that is a key word in the IRC is the word service. Service always means government service.
Yeah, but you've
right.
Well, you've explained it to me, so I don't.
Right.
I'm sure the listener
That's
needs
why I
to hear
don't do
it,
any
but-
services.
You do labor. You labor, right? You get to keep the fruits of your labor without any taxes. But if you do service, then you fall under you having received compensation for services. And who receives compensation for services?
Military service,
Right.
Government employees.
Government service. And where do we know that from? Article 1 says congressmen shall be paid for their services. Article 2 says the president shall be paid for his services. Article 3 says the judges of the Supreme Court shall be paid for their services. And the militia shall be called into actual service of the United States. That's what the Constitution says. That is the word service. It means service. It means government service, military service, postal service, witness protection service, immigration
Secret
naturalization service, secret service, right? Correction service, whatever. Centers for Medicaid and Medicare services, human services, internal revenue service. All service means government service, period. End of discussion. What you do at your own private job is not service. It's labor. And labor is yours to keep.
Well, I do want to take a pause there for a second because we have a caller on the line, and it is Free Talk Live, and you can call in at 603-283-6160. Dave Ridley, are you in Colorado still? I guess it doesn't really...
I am.
All right. Well, Dave Ridley from Colorado, what's on your mind?
Well, now, do I need to ask Bear a question related to what Bear's talking about?
No, not necessarily. We can talk about other things and get back into the tax avoidance whenever.
Okay. Yeah, I just had an update for you with regard to NH Exit.
Nice.
Okay.
So, and then just stop me if you guys have already talked about all of this, but are you familiar with there was an annual summit on self-determination about, I guess, in February?
No.
I wasn't.
Now, it's taken, because you guys are not on as much as you used to be, it's taken me a month or two to actually get on the air at the right time to talk about this. But basically, NH Exit and the New England independence movement and the Free State folks were all represented at this summit. I don't know how much you guys already knew about it.
No, I didn't hear about it. I've been a little checked out from NH Exit stuff, but I still am a big supporter.
Yeah, well, this was an in-person summit this time. So I guess around September, the Cal Exit folks, Yes California, hosted a web conference for secession movements around the country. And then they were sufficiently happy with that that they decided to do it again. So one in February of 2025, it was February 22nd, they had more people this time, and they had folks from all over the world, actually, independence movements that were represented. And so I guess...
Wow. Sorry, do you know how many movements there are? Like, I didn't think there'd be that many all over the world.
Well, I mean, once you start factoring in the world, it becomes uncountable. The ones they had represented from all over the world were the Cape secessionists in South Africa, the Biafrans in Nigeria, there was Western Togoland, Ghana, and there was another group that I can't pronounce, a group in Zimbabwe that's trying to pull some kind of a secession there. And that was it. They at least had those represented, and I think they were all there in person, in addition to about 10 U.S. independence movements.
Nice.
Wow, there are 10 here now. Nice.
So this is like Alaska, California, Florida, Hawaii, Louisiana, New Hampshire, Texas, and Vermont, whatever that comes up to. It's a little
I hadn't heard about Louisiana. I heard about all the others, I think.
Yeah, and Louisiana was also represented in September. So representing New Hampshire was Steve Valle. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly.
I think it's Valle.
Valle, okay, that may be correct. So he's what does he call it? I think it's the Club 75 Alliance. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, he has this idea that he wants to bring as many people to New Hampshire that make at least $75,000 a year because it puts them in a certain tax bracket. I think that's why, right? So it makes them kind of a club.
Yes, and he is often at pains to sort of distance himself a little bit from maybe you and me, in the sense that, like, what you and I kind of did with our constitutional amendment proposal in New Hampshire was basically just a unilateral declaration of independence. And although that's not the only way to do it, it's also possible to have negotiated independence where it's a mutual, like Estonia and Moscow did in 1991, roughly. So Steve Valle is more focused on that. Like, how do we enter into negotiations? How do we come up with something that's mutually acceptable for everybody?
Yeah, I tend to disagree. I tend to disagree with him on the fact that he's always trying to say we don't want to do this in a way that, like, basically is illegal. We want to do this and we want to make sure we're doing this the most, like, agreeable and legal way. And the thing is, like, even if the government made a law and said, yep, it's illegal to secede now, I don't care. Morally, you should be allowed to leave an agreement you don't want to be in anymore. You should just be able to.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that this is happening anyways, that individual people are just opting out. Right. They're whether, like I said, there's many ways to skin a cat. You got all these processes people are doing, whether they're secured party creditor processes, whether they're the sending in the attached statement with your affidavit, with your passport style process, correcting your citizenship from that of a United States federal citizen to a U.S. citizen, whether you're what Bear's talking about on the lawful taxavoidance.com. And the thing is so many people are just slaves due to their own ignorance because they don't understand definition of words. And these like New Hampshire exit and Texit movements, I sort of think they're really all just kind of barking up the wrong tree, every single one of them. And I support them. It's great what they're doing. They're making some awareness about it. But the thing is the people themselves can just walk away from these counties, from these corporations, because everything is just corporate fictions.
Right.
Like the organic nation state of New Hampshire is essentially unoccupied because nobody's really exercising it. And we have a corporation calling itself State of New Hampshire. That was chartered under the United States Corporation sometime in the 1880s, and that's how everything's essentially operating as. And
well, sometimes you have to actually do more to get them out of your lives. Like, for example, the federal government has just placed itself whole giant, horrible, giant, hideous stone buildings on the land that should belong to New Hampshire without following the correct procedure. And Jason Gerhardt figured this out. I think it was Jason and I'm not sure exactly. Jason and Frank.
They both figured it out. Yeah.
They figured this out, and I attended their trials, and I think you did too.
Right.
Where they spelled it out, and basically the federal government is here illegally, did not follow our processes, our quote unquote processes, their New Hampshire's processes.
Their own processes.
And they don't care. They said they shouldn't have to because of something supremacy clause. Yeah. That's what the judge said.
And the thing is the state of New Hampshire Incorporated is just a franchise of the United States Incorporated. And everybody is working for, the state of New Hampshire, and they're laundering drugs. You listen to the Mike Gill stuff about the Pandora Papers and how all, Shaheen and all these guys in the Secretary of State's office are all basically part of a drug laundering operation, which is the same exact thing that's happening with the drug cartels, and it's the same thing with the Arizona and the New Mexico Secretary of State's office. All these same allegations.
Wow.
That the cartels are laundering. What they're doing in Arizona is they're laundering money through using the Secretary of State's office. They're buying up all of these empty housing lots, investing their money into it. The cartels. Multiple, they own tons of basically single family homes in these homeowner association communities in Arizona now, according to this report that was done by this insurance actuary who was actually a member of the Arizona House of Representatives. Ernie Hancock had her on to talk about this about 2 years ago. And hopefully something's going to happen about it, but we are facing a massive corruption epidemic, and one of the problems I have with the whole MAGA movement is you got a whole bunch of MAGA-tards, I'm going to call them, that are like, oh, we can just sit back and drink beer and smoke weed
because RFK's got it handled.
Yeah, because Trump and RFK and Tulsi and Cash are they're going to take care of everything. The whole hopium thing. So you got a bunch of people that are like, we're motivated a lot more, to do things and aware of stuff, and now they're just, sitting back. But I do think that this is going to be a really good time for people like us who to press on and push this hard, including one of the things that I really want to bring to the table very soon is a property tax issue. And there's this YouTuber channel called Real Estate Mindset. And these guys have actually filed a complaint with the Department of Justice in Texas over basically the fraud happening with all of the property tax and the fraud with all of the school districts. And then they're calling it bond fraud. And I'm learning a little bit about it. I've just been listening to their, YouTubes and stuff. And I listened to the complaint that they get like a 40-page complaint. They got audio files of that. You can listen to that or you can read it. But anyways, they're with a Department of Justice now that wants to be, righteous and constitutionally and allegedly promoting freedom. I think the next few years would be a good time for, the freedom movement to get some momentum and try to take advantage of,
Man, the House of New Hampshire is doing so many good things over and over again in a row right now. It's like it puts Trump and his cabinet to shame. Like, people are talking about, like, oh, he's doing a whole bunch of good stuff. I've been listening to Alex Jones recently, and it's like he's just always cheerleading about what Trump is doing, and it's like, but I don't actually hear anything. It's like you're saying he's doing all these good things, but I don't even know nothing has been really done. Like, even with Doge, it's like he's cut stuff, I guess, but, like, is it really helping us to, like, just cut a little bit of this giant, monster off and, like, act like the job's done? Apparently, he only has, like, a month left. I thought he was going to just be doing this for the next 4 years, but I don't know if it's a month, but
a month till they shut down again, and they have to do.
I guess. Is that what it is?
I think that's what the month deadline they were talking about. I'm not 100% sure
so
that the government's going to shut down a month. The last thing they did was a thing to just run the government for a few more months that like Massey was against and everybody else was for, whatever that's called.
It just seems like there's a lot of talk about something being done with Trump and like with him dismantling the Department of Education. He didn't really.
I don't think he'd do that. It will take an act of Congress to do that, I believe.
And they probably won't do it.
No, I don't think they'll do it.
I wish this government was regulated somehow to where it couldn't interfere or violate the rights of the people that are granted. I wish there was something that regulated the government that wouldn't let them do that. Would be so cool if there was some kind of document that had teeth and could go eat these politicians.
But hold on, the way that the government actually regulate the people is that they allow the people to regulate themselves. For example, if they ask you, hey, what's your source of income? And you said, oh, well, I raise farm animals. Then you fall under their jurisdiction immediately. And the reason for that is because they use a key word. And that word is source, right? Which is one of the words that I was just trying to explain earlier. The source. When they say you have a source of income, ? And you answer that question, you're already under their jurisdiction.
Even if your answer is no?
Yeah. Well, if you say no, then you're not. But you have to say no. And the reason is the word source means source of government revenue. All right? Well, it means a source of receipts from taxes or other sources.
You know it's not fair? Like, what if they come up to you and ask any question and you just say, listen, anything I say, I'm not speaking legalese.
But here's the thing. All right, here's why we have such a problem. It's because we the people are supposed to be the masters of our own government. And by acquiescing, by answering the question, we are presumed to understand our own interests. So we are presumed to understand the law. So when they trick us and say, hey, what's your source of income? And you give them a number or a job title, then you've fallen into their game because you are not in control of your own sovereignty, of your own knowledge base. But if they ask me, what's your source of income? And I say, I don't have a source of income and I haven't had one since I left the Army like 10 years ago or whatever, then they know that I'm not to be messed with, right? Because they understand that I understand what's going on. Now, if everybody understood these sorts of things, then we would be free, right? So freedom is merely the price of knowledge and courage, whereas servitude is what you pay, or if you're ignorant and you're a coward, right? And you got to fight, like Jay was saying. You got to fight this. I don't care if it's a traffic ticket or something stupid. You got to fight it. But also you have to understand how the government works, because the way they work is that they commit this extrinsic fraud by not defining the words and by putting it into a jurisdiction foreign to the Constitution, as described in the Declaration of Independence. And how do they do that? They put something into a regulatory scheme. And a regulatory scheme has to do with commerce or government property or some sort of interpersonal relationship, like as in trading or something.
That would include a service, probably.
That includes maybe a service, but in any way, in any case, they put it into a regulatory scheme, and then because they're constitutionally allowed to act under that regulatory scheme, they expand that into your personal space, right? They say, oh, well, you, how much income do you have? And by using that word, by the way, the word income is not defined in the Internal Revenue Code.
Wow.
The word gross income is defined to mean income from whatever source derived. So if we know what the word source means, and the word source means a source of government income, what is the word?
Gross income means...
Gross income. It means government income.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you fall into their trap and say, yeah, I have income, then you're done. You're done. The only question is how much tax you pay.
So you're basically lying about yourself every time you fill out a W-2.
You're basically lying yourself. You're always lying yourself.
Did they ever ask Ian if he had income? Did they ever prove he had income?
I don't remember right now. The thing is, the IRS never talked to him before his trial, and that was a point of contention in the trial, and that the jury should have picked up on, like, well, that you never tried to fix this with us
was
beforehand.
That made explicitly clear to the jury?
It wasn't made clear.
It was made explicitly clear. In fact, it was his lawyer, and it was like a mic drop moment, but they
didn't care.
That's just, like, so I would have to have, like, more time to talk about that. We do have a caller on the line. I want to see what they want to talk about.
Excellent.
Unscreened caller, what's your name and topic?
My name is John. I just want to talk about the taxes, the stress it creates. I think it creates too much stress for a lot of people.
It does.
It's unfair to a lot of hardworking people that don't make that much money. Mm-hmm. And I also don't understand why these billionaires, a lot of them, they set up, I suppose, I don't know, they set up an account or an LLC in what do you call it?
Cayman Islands or something.
Islands. Yep. Yeah, like in the Cayman Islands. And like, I just don't understand how people with that much money don't have to pay taxes. Me personally, I'm okay with paying taxes. I realize we live in a community, to make it better. That's just the way things are currently.
I'd have to disagree with that, but go ahead.
Yeah, taxes don't make anything better. Maybe you have an example.
I don't mind paying it, but like, I feel like, I don't have that much money.
But if they're lying to you to steal your money, then you do mind paying it.
Well, one thing I just have to say is I think that you're kind of falling into this trap where it's like, well, if I have to pay taxes, then these other people should also have to pay taxes. It's no different than saying, if I'm going to get beat up by the bully should beat up everyone. And that's not really, the way that I think you would agree with thinking, correct? Like, if you're getting beat up, would you rather no one get beat up or everyone?
I feel like it's not about beating anybody. I mean, like, yeah, when you
but it is. It's being stolen from.
Like
at the threat of violence.
They get beat up when they get their paycheck. They feel like they've been beaten up or mugged.
That's true.
Or pay property taxes.
What I'm getting at is these people have the system rigged. They bought the politicians. They bought the judges. How do you?
So hold on, one step back, if I may, sir. The reason that they're putting all this duress on you has nothing to do with their personal gain. The reason that the income tax exists and the way it was created was just a follow-up of the Federal Reserve Act, which allowed them to print money out of thin air. Now, if the government was able to print money out of thin air, then why would they need your money to fund their work, right? And the answer to that is because they want you to be mind controlled. They want you to be a part of the draw that of the demand rather on printed paper money. And when you have to have printed paper money to pay back a tax or an alleged tax, then you hoard that stuff. And that's what makes the Federal Reserve tick, because it creates an artificial demand on otherwise worthless paper. And that's the real reason that you're paying a tax. It's not because they want any of your money.
I completely agree with that. That's like the high level way of thinking of it. And I also really think that they want to stress us out, which he mentioned. Yes. And you should consider somebody purposely applying stress to you as the same thing as violence, because
it is.
I mean, cortisol tears up your muscles from the inside. Just one example. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up. 603-283-6160. More Free Talk Live coming up. Don't go anywhere.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp, is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper with the Week in Review. This week, The Atlantic magazine in the United States published attack plans shared by Donald Trump's officials in a group chat that mistakenly included the magazine's editor. The White House tried to downplay the security blunder about plans to strike Houthi rebels in Yemen. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said someone made a big mistake. Ever since Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
Like the rest of the Trump administration, Marco Rubio said the details in the chat did not amount to classified material. But Democrats and some Republicans have argued the discussion of the timing and weapons used, along with the addition of a journalist to the group, amounted to a serious failure of national security practices. Secretary Rubio did acknowledge that the information was not intended to be divulged to the public, and that was a mistake that shouldn't have happened, adding he thinks there will be reforms and changes. Kate Fisher, Washington.
This week, Donald Trump announced a 25% tariff on all automobiles imported into the United States. The US president said the move was intended to boost domestic manufacturing, but it's expected to raise car prices for US buyers. There was an angry global reaction. FSN's Iris Spitzer has more.
The U.S. president announced the new tariffs during a televised address in the Oval Office, saying that they will go into effect on April 2nd.
And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff.
The tariffs will have an immediate impact on the U.S. car market, where nearly half of all vehicles are currently assembled outside of the country. Mexico is the top foreign supplier of cars to the U.S., and the U.S. automakers who have plants there won't be exempt from the new tariffs.
U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and U.S. Second Lady Usha Vance were forced to downgrade a trip to Greenland this week to one of the United States military bases. It follows weeks of comments by the U.S. president that America should acquire Greenland, an autonomous territory of Denmark. Ever since Caroline Malone reported on the run-up to the controversial visit.
No more trips to see a dog sledding race or historical sites for Usha Vance. Instead, joined by J.D. Vance, the pair will only head to the Peterfik Air Base, the US northernmost installation which contributes to missile defence and space surveillance. Usha Vance had been due to go it alone on a cultural exchange, but not in an official capacity, ruffling feathers, especially given US President Donald Trump has said he'll do whatever is necessary to acquire Greenland. Only 6% of Greenlanders polled would want to join the US. 84% also want full sovereignty from Denmark.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. A powerful earthquake hit the Asian nations of Myanmar and Thailand on Friday, killing scores of people. In the Thai capital, Bangkok, an under-construction skyscraper collapsed. Ever since Laura Westbrook sent this report shortly after the news of the quake was confirmed.
On Friday afternoon, a 7.7 magnitude quake hit the northwest city of Sagaing in Myanmar at a shallow depth, according to the United States Geological Survey. A 6.4 magnitude aftershock hit the same area minutes later. There are reports buildings have fallen onto their sides, roads cracked open, and the well-known Ava Bridge has collapsed near the epicenter. Across the border in Thailand, Where earthquakes are rare, the powerful tremors sent residents across many cities flooding into the streets in panic. In Bangkok, a 30-story building under construction has collapsed, and that's trapped dozens of workers. Laura Westbrook, Hong Kong.
This week, France held the latest Ukraine support summit in Paris, attended by 30 countries, plus the EU and NATO. Host President Emmanuel Macron announced another $2 billion in military assistance from France for Ukraine, including missiles, drones and armoured vehicles. Eversen's Ross Cullen reports from Paris.
Emmanuel Macron is hosting European leaders and the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Paris on Thursday in a summit that's being co-chaired by the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. One of the key goals will be discussions around a Franco-British plan for a so-called reassurance force of thousands of troops to be potentially deployed in Ukraine after a peace agreement. The plan has been dismissed by the US, but London and Paris are serious about the idea, with Macron saying on the eve of the conference that any Western forces invited into Ukraine by Kiev would respond to any attack on them from Russia. Ross Cullen, Paris.
And that's the Week in Review. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
People are saying it could be a baby bump. Our senior celebrity correspondent, Tyler, is here. Tyler, you always have the inside dish. What's the deal?
She looks like she got fat, so she might have a baby in her tummy.
Oh? What else have you heard?
I heard she has a boyfriend, and they have sex.
That's right. You know, the Hollywood couple vacationed in Rome together just 2 months ago.
They had a big hotel room, and I can tell you what they did in it.
Spill it, Tyler.
He put his in her.
Hot. She is one lucky gal.
And she's going crazy.
Uh-oh, is stardom starting to wear on Emma?
Yeah, she's crazy and dumb. She put a carrot in her.
Whoa, do tell.
Yeah, she said, oh, this carrot's like my boyfriend's. I'm gonna rub it all over my. I'm so gross. Then she ate it like Bugs Bunny.
What a hot mess. Hey, Emma, get it together, girl. Tyler, you are breaking news as always.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160 is the phone number you can call to get in on the conversation, and we're going to go right to the phones. But some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey, which is spelled a little weird. It's Odyssee. So visit video.freetalklive.com and click join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 a month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you are feeling so inspired, and you'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room. And it's already enabled the members-only chat, so thank you to everyone who does support us there, and everybody who supports us in general. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
J Noon.
Bear Arms.
And let's just go straight to the phones. We have an unscreened caller. I wonder if it's Skeeter, but I don't want to accuse you of being Skeeter if you're not. Unscreened caller, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Your boy, Bear Arms Skeeter, mauling sovereign citizens since 2023. Hey, Bear.
Hey, how you doing?
From one bear to another.
You've never been called Bear Arms Skeeter before, but...
Bear Arms Skeeter, I have bare arms. Rawr. I'm logically mauling you guys. Rawr. But, hey, Bear.
Yes, sir.
Why do you feel the need to... Whenever you state a definition from the tax code, supposedly, I notice you keep replacing the word includes with means. What's your intention with that?
I haven't done that because you know why? I haven't mentioned any terms defined in the tax code. The three words which I mentioned, property, source, and income, none of those are defined in the tax code. They are defined with respect to the Constitution. And Eisner versus McCumber says that Congress may not redefine the words in the Constitution because the Constitution is the power from which it draws to legislate in the first place.
What do you have to say about that?
So Skeeter, you have mischaracterized what I said. I did not use and change the word for includes or means yet. Okay, that doesn't mean I won't say it in the future, but I will say it with a caveat.
How'd I guess?
But what's your point? I mean, even if I did, what's your point?
Okay.
Are you saying that we should play
bad faith interpretation? Forget all this bad faith interpretation of the tax code, right?
Yeah. Okay.
If you had good faith, right, you could point to a reason in history why Congress would want to tax only federal income. It doesn't even make any sense, right? It would be a decaying sequence.
It's the only thing they have jurisdiction over.
It's not about good faith here because government has, according to Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2, Congress has the power to make all needful rules and regulations respecting its territories and other property belonging to the United States. That's what it says. It's not about faith, good or bad. That's what the law states. That's what we are bound to as people. All right, you find me a law. Listen, Skeeter. You find me a law that says Congress shall exercise something over private property. Can you find me? If you can, I'd be happy to see it. Find me one law that says Congress or the government can exercise anything over private property without an equitable or legal interest. Unless you commit a crime, I can't take away your private property. Unless I give you a fair compensation, I can't take your property for public use. That's the law, buddy.
Property. They're taxing your gains on they're taxing your gains on property.
Gains on property. And so tell me, Skeeter, how many property types are there in this world? There is property belonging to the United States, and then there's property not belonging to the United States. And which of those properties does the United States have jurisdiction? Question mark. Answer it, please.
Everything from a.
You're silent, but you have nothing to say.
I'm talking foreigners making domestic income.
Of course,
making domestic income.
So now you're twisting words.
Let's answer the one.
What does the 16th Amendment say, Bear?
It says Congress shall have the power to attack all income from whatever source derived. Now, what does the word source mean? Well, let me
derive the definition for source.
Look. Obviously, you didn't read the book.
And also, the first segment you already talked about where you got that.
I think I know how you derive. You don't look up the definition of source. You derive it from instances in the Constitution. Am I correct or not?
Hey, look. Why don't you go read? Why don't you go listen? We can talk about the Constitution, but let's start with something even more recent.
Address my point.
I'm telling you.
He said in the first segment, so he's not like keeping it a secret that he gets it from the Constitution.
Go to the USTreasury.gov. Okay, listen. Go to the fiscaldata.treasury.gov, American Finance Guide, Government Revenue. And they talk about government revenue is income received from taxes and other sources, right, to pay for government expenditures. The primary source of revenue for the United States government are taxes, all right? Sources of federal revenue. U.S. government collects contributions from taxpayer, and other taxes, and so forth. The word source means sources of government revenue. Now, also look up the Georgia Constitution, the Pennsylvania Constitution, the Rhode Island Constitution, and the Massachusetts Constitution, and look at how the word source is used. Now, again, the Constitution.
We can look at history. We know why they created the income tax in
you're just that's just conjecture.
We know the 16th Amendment preceded this.
Your thought process is actually more illogical, Skeeter. considering that you're just saying that you think you know why they did something. It's totally an unacceptable answer to say maybe they did it in a way that doesn't make sense to you because they didn't have the power to do it in the way that you think they should have done it.
Make it make sense.
Okay, let me make it make sense. All right, Skeeter, if you would quiet down, I'll read it to you. I'll read it to you like a little schoolboy. Okay. I'm the schoolboy, okay? So now, please, give me a moment.
Like means includes.
Give me a moment.
Every time we give you new info, you just continue to say you know what you're talking about, and when you won't go look it up.
You know, Bear, the term employee is codified with employer in the tax code. You know that?
It is. And an employer is one who receives services from an employee. Did you know that? Look it up.
And what does services mean is
so if services means government service, an employee means a government employee, officer, elected official, or a corporate officer.
Where did you get your definition for service?
You can listen to the first
I already
segment.
told you.
Yeah.
I already told you this. You got to read. You obviously, you're not a very good student, are you?
Don't sing this, read.
All right, so
again, I didn't catch it. Where did you get your definition for service?
Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3 of the Constitution. And in addition, what's that?
He's using instances. The Constitution is talking about the limitations of the power of government. They're only going to talk about services related to the government.
Listen to me.
You can't use instances where they use the term to construct a definition. That's induction fallacy.
Okay, let me. Okay, you can.
It's just like.
Hey, listen. Calm down. Let me explain to you how it works.
The word included means.
Let me explain to you how it works. It is elementary law that every statute is to be read in the light of the Constitution. Every word must have its due force and appropriate meaning, and no word is to be regarded unnecessarily used or needlessly added. The Constitution is a written instrument. As such, its meaning does not alter. That which it meant when adopted, it means now. Words in the Constitution must be read with a gloss of the experience of those who framed them and would receive the significance of the experience that they were addressed. A significance not found in the dictionary.
It's going to be related to the government, right?
I'm done talking to you. You're an ignorant.
Seriously, that's what it's like talking to Skeeter every single time. It's like he asks a question, you have the answer for it, and then he just starts screaming. He was saying no, and I was like, "What do you mean no? Like this is the answer we're giving you. Like, do you have a rebuttal other than no?"
And Skeeter is not a student; he's a troll.
Yeah.
So
anyway, it doesn't matter. But he does expose the mentality of these people who are against us, which is very, very irrational, very almost intellectually violent condition that they have.
Like most of your now Democrats.
Yeah.
They've gotten so unhinged and crazy. That's another thing with this jury thing is, there should definitely not be any Democrats on a jury where there's a Republican being tried.
Yeah, I mean, because now they literally justified violence against people and their property just based on what the company's owner's political beliefs are. So I'm like obviously alluding to the Tesla stuff.
That's actually not why they're being violent. They're not against.
Oh, I heard it from the mouth of Arya.
Right, but they're not against the retarded woke left libtards. Don't hate Elon Musk because of his politics. They hate Elon Musk because their overlord, the algorithm that has enslaved them, has instructed them to hate Elon Musk. These people did not get to be as libtarded as they are, except for the absolute propaganda machine that is the algorithm, or AI, probably. I'm sure AI has been around for a very long time, in the shadows doing its work. Most of these people who are, have this mental illness called libtardism, as far as I'm concerned, that's what it's called. They are young enough to where their developing brains were programmed by the algorithm. And then you have a whole bunch of older people that are even in their 60s now that are spent the last 20 years looking at Facebook and being on Instagram and X and all of these sites that are programming people, and then you got people who don't have time for that because they're hardworking, and they're not falling for any of this stuff. But yeah, it's definitely not because of Elon Musk did anything. It's because they were instructed by Rachel Maddow and the people on The View and the algorithm at Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and even, and whatever, these, online social medias and stuff to hate Elon Musk.
You can tell because just like 4 years ago, they loved Tesla, Elon Musk.
Right.
It was like part of their identity was we love electronic cars and Tesla is like a really good thing. And then the edict comes down. Okay, leftist, now you have to hate him. And by the way, I'm not including Arya in this because Arya has always disliked Elon Musk and she has like some libertarian reasons for it. But she did say that it should be considered libertarian or not against the non-aggression principle to destroy property that somebody's bought from Tesla because they bought it from Tesla and he's a quote-unquote Nazi. So that's what I'm saying. If somebody is on the jury who is a Democrat, subscribes to that ideology, and genuinely believes that because I'm just not a Democrat or because they heard I'm a free stater or one of my tweets that I'm a Nazi, then it's like I tweeted free Christopher Cantwell the other day because I genuinely believe that he didn't do anything wrong in the case.
Yeah, I don't think he should be in jail.
Now.
There's no injured party with his thing.
So he's not in jail right now, but there's a new thing. But I'm just saying.
Is there an injured party?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't believe the person lying.
Oh, I see. Someone claiming an injury?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, anyways, I'm just saying they could find some reason they decided I'm a Nazi, and in their minds, that is reason to do violence against this person, and now they're on the jury, and they're, and it doesn't have to just be on the jury. It's like if they call into the show, they're probably never going to be reasoned with. Not even calling Skeeter a leftist, but it's that mentality that we just witnessed.
They're violent, unhinged, psychopathic cult members. This is what it's come down to.
We do have another caller in line. If you guys don't have anything else to say to Skeeter.
No.
So
I don't think he's intellectually honest.
Me either.
So I don't want to talk
to him. That's what I've been saying. So we have Jet on the line from somewhere in the West. Jet, you're on Free Talk Live. What is on your mind?
Well, a couple things. One, since we're talking about this fantasy we refer to as government, I believe there should be this placard on the front of every judicial building, legislative building, even administrative, I suppose, if you like. And it should read like this: we hereby grant ourselves the right, power, and authority to grant ourselves rights, powers, and authority.
That's basically it.
Because that's essentially, it's a sorcery. It's the sorcery of these people who say, poof, here is a law. Poof, you must obey. Anyway, that's the one thing I wanted to mention.
Well, one thing...
You talked about the...
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Cut you off. Go ahead.
No, if you had a response, that's great.
Well, people ought to really understand the difference between a law and a statute. And the word statute, which is written legislative law, it means, according to the Supreme Court at the Floyd Acceptances, it's page 74, or book 74, page 666, a statute is an act authorizing the making of contracts with the government. Okay, that's a very specific definition. And so when they talk about law, they often talk about legislative law. Now, if you're not making a contract with the government, or if you refuse consent, then none of those things apply to you. That really is the truth.
It's kind of like a corporation could totally make rules within their their policy.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing unreasonable about that, but they can't go and apply it to somebody on the street.
Right. Unless that person on the street is doing something to somebody else or doing something with somebody else. For example, if you're a doctor and you want to go practice medicine, then by interacting with the public has a right as an individual and also as a whole to regulate your conduct as a doctor, for example. But there's no license for you to, let's say, go take your own aspirin or even do your own appendectomy, right? Right? Where does it say that I can't have my own medical procedure performed by me? Do I need to get a license to perform my own medical procedure? No, right. So obviously there is no license to bear arms because bearing arms is a constitutional right. However, there's a license to carry. It means to carry in the performance of your public duties. It means to carry on the public the powers of a public office. So that's how the license to carry works. And that's how all licenses work, because the government can only license and legislate and regulate those activities you do with other people through commerce and those properties that it controls and it owns.
I still have to disagree with your idea about the doctors, though, because it's like, what if one person agrees, I agree for you to practice medicine in this way, but then the rest of the quote-unquote public doesn't agree? Like, why do they have any say in that people...
Well, they don't, because if you establish a one-to-one relationship with a doctor and you have full informed consent of what he is capable of, his training and his ethics and whatever, then you have that right to ask him to do something for you.
But they still might go after that doctor.
No, they won't. They can't unless you complain. Unless you complain, make a patient complaint, they can't do that to you. And it's the same thing with private membership assemblies. I use that word very, very, very specifically, not associations. Now remember, an association is under the tax code in 7701. One of the things that is included in the definition of a person, right? An association.
Yep.
But whereas if you make an assembly, guess what? That's a word that's used in the First Amendment.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, it's
that's
in there
right.
too.
That's why you don't protest. I don't protest. I don't have a riot, right? Because those are all unlawful, illegal, and otherwise regulable. What I do is I peaceably assemble. Whether that means I peaceably assemble outside or whether I peaceably assemble my AR-15 inside, I assemble, and it is my right to assemble, is it not?
Yeah, you.
There you go.
I believe I have a right to assemble, and that's I've never liked the wording of private member association because of that association. Just like I don't like the idea of putting trusts, like property in a trust and stuff, because one of the things in Massachusetts, Chapter 7, Section 5, whatever, the definitions. A person is defined as a corporation, trust, association, or other legal entity. And
right.
New Hampshire is basically, all the state definitions basically use that same exact. New Hampshire does it a little different. They say a person is a corporation, trust, association, legal entity, or individual. And then they say an individual is a person, corporation, trust, association, or other legal entity. And
the underlying principle behind that is all things that rely on juristic determinations, such as a corporation or a trust, is under the jurisdiction of the state, right? Whereas all things not created by the state, for example, an assembly of people or yourself, man and woman, and so forth, those are not under the jurisdiction of the state. We are the creators of the state. We are the creators. We are the government, right? And the government being our creation, we are the masters of our creation.
I think I'll have to push back on that because, like, I wasn't around when it was created. I don't want to be a part of it.
But you create it now, and they work for you. See, that's the thing, is I don't hate my government. They merely work for me. That's all.
But I think doing a creation is a specific thing. Like, I would have to go out there and intend to create something, probably write it down.
Yeah, so that's known as agency, the agency problem. The agent that you create to serve you becomes your master, essentially. And that's something that we've been fighting since the dawn of time.
Yeah, like even if I voted for someone and then I go up to them and tell them, like, hey, now that you won, you got to do this for me because you served me, they can just laugh in my face and say I'm going to do the opposite.
And
they do. And they often do. They often do. However, it's important. Yeah, go ahead. Somebody's talking?
Oh, Jet, go ahead.
Yes, I said, I've got somehow I have to persuade you guys to just dig down to the base level of understanding that people, other humans, have no more right to do these things, to make rules, than you or I do. Getting back to my statement about, isn't it kind of silly that they're able to grant themselves the powers and authorities to be able to grant themselves powers and authorities? It's like it's a magic and the sorcery. But what I also wanted to talk about was things about how to respond to certain people who call themselves authorities, the policemen.
Policy officers.
And I got stopped recently. These, the fellow comes up and he tells me that I forgot to signal coming off of this one road into a parking lot. I'm thinking, okay, so this is the highlight of your evening that you feel that it's important for you to tell me. I probably did. I probably didn't. I don't know. But in any event, then he starts asking those questions, where'd you come from? And all I said was, I love those questions. And he didn't ask a single other one.
Wow.
But anyway, the way you respond to these things is with another question like, why do you ask, or is that important? Whatever.
Well, Jet, sorry to cut you off. We got to come back on the other side of the break, but 603-283-6160. I do want to hear that story from you, Jet. So don't go anywhere. More Free Talk Live coming up, 603-283-6160.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th. Forkfest.party.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. At least 144 people have been killed and more than 730 injured after a major earthquake hit Myanmar and neighbouring Thailand. Myanmar's military government has warned the death toll is expected to rise. Dozens of people are trapped, including construction workers in Bangkok, where a high-rise that was under construction collapsed. Evasion's Laura Westbrook reports.
On Friday afternoon, a 7.7 magnitude quake hit the northwest city of Sagaing in Myanmar at a shallow depth, according to the United States Geological Survey. A 6.4 magnitude aftershock hit the same area minutes later. There are reports buildings have fallen onto their sides, roads cracked open, and the well-known Ava Bridge has collapsed near the epicenter. Across the border in Thailand, where earthquakes are rare, the powerful tremors sent residents across many cities flooding into the streets in panic. In Bangkok, a 30-story building under construction has collapsed, and that's trapped dozens of workers. The quake prompted Thai Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra to declare a state of emergency in Bangkok, where some metro and light rail services have been suspended, but the airport is operating as normal.
A US judge has ordered the Trump administration to preserve messages that were part of a group chat on the app Signal. Officials, including the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, accidentally included a journalist in their discussions about airstrikes in Yemen. US District Judge James Boasberg has ordered the preservation of the messages that detailed attack plans on the Yemen-based Houthis group. It follows a lawsuit filed by a left-leaning group, American Oversight, demanding clarification on whether the officials violated federal record-keeping laws. Ukraine's president says the United States is constantly changing the details of a proposed minerals deal. The new proposal reportedly offers no long-term security guarantees for Ukraine, but ties it to a joint investment fund from the income of all its natural resources. Evasion's William Denslow reports from Kiev.
US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has suggested this minerals deal could be signed as early as next week. But while noting that he's not necessarily against the proposal, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said Thursday that Washington kept changing the terms of what he calls a major new deal. The current plan reportedly contains no security guarantees for Kyiv, something the country has repeatedly called for. But the US maintains that an economic partnership and increased footprint in the country would act as a deterrence against Russia.
Britain's King Charles has cancelled public engagements this Friday after experiencing side effects from his cancer treatment. He spent a short period in hospital on Thursday for observation. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
that you control. And 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. And Free Talk Live is brought to you by LibertyMinded.com. Official Free Talk Live gear like t-shirts and hoodies are available at LibertyMinded.com. Plus, you'll find a unique collection of cool and funny liberty-oriented clothing at LibertyMinded.com. That's LibertyMinded.com. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Jay Noon.
And Bear Arms.
And in last segment, Jet, if you don't mind restarting, you told us that, well, I can kind of summarize, but you told us, Jet, the caller, that you got pulled over and they claimed that you failed to signal as you were making a turn. So what kind of questions did this parasite ask you?
Well, it's interesting. You should use that term. So I'll back up a little bit and kind of refresh the idea that everyone needs to look upon people who take a specific office or title and that kind of thing, to look upon them as just other humans. In other words, for me, there is no point in arguing the details of whether something is a code or a statute or that this person has this authority based upon that, or even so far back as the Constitution, because these are just individuals, people, and I'm glad that that Jay at one point way back when brought in this terminology of parasite, because they're just other humans. Now, if you were in a particular community or apartment building or whatever, and there was this psychopath, well, let's call it, what's another psychopathy? Like, the one where the schizophrenia, for example.
Oh, okay.
And you knew this person was schizophrenic, but he had a pencil and a paper, and he wrote some stuff down. And he honestly, in his mind, believes that he has the right, not only the right to do this, but the right to enforce whatever he had written down. To me, these people are suffering from a very deep-seated mental illness when they honestly believe that they have this right, power, and authority. And how did I say that they got this right, power, and authority? By granting themselves the right, power, and authority. Now, I try to stay away from these people as much as possible.
Yeah, same.
But getting to my story about the police thing, he pulls me over, and of course, the very first thing I say, I like to engage the conversation first and say, "How may I help you?"
That's pretty funny.
Because obviously he stopped me because he needed my help, right? Why else would he stop me? In any event, he starts asking these questions like, "So where are you coming from?" And all I said was, "I love those questions," and not one more question came out of his mouth like that. He just kind of gave me a warning for making sure I used my blinker. And I didn't think at the time I should ask him, what kind of a warning is that? And that leads into the idea that whenever I'm encountering police or other people who believe that they have authority, I like to ask them questions. And for the cop, for example, he says, well, if he says something like, where are you headed to? I say, well, why do you ask? Rather than I don't answer questions.
Yeah.
Or
I like
is
that.
Is that important? In other words, it really messes with their heads.
That is really nice, actually, because a lot of people tell me like, oh, you messed up, Bonnie. You need to say, I don't answer questions. And out of self-preservation, I just don't do that, because it seems like starting a fight. That seems like being the aggressive party. And these people, I feel like people who tell me that haven't interacted with as many cops as I have. I've interacted with way too many cops, and not just getting pulled over either. Like, for example, going to visit Ian, just barely asking these people a question triggers them to no end. It's like, I'll be like, oh, why is that? And they're like, listen, I'm just saying. Their immediate response is always to escalate. That's their training. And you can be as reasonable as you think, but if you're going out of your way to be aggressive to these people, like, you better be prepared for them to literally kill you. Like, that is as far as they will go and have gone. And I'm not saying you, Jet, what you're doing sounds actually like a way to calm them down in a way, but some people like try to suggest to me that I'm doing it wrong unless I say I don't answer questions. So instead, I just be as quiet as possible.
I try to keep the conversation jovial, but the main point I'm making here is I relate and respond to these people as just another person who I met on the street. That's the way I deal with them. Of course, it may be the reason why I ended up in jail 5 times too, but because I just treated them as another human being. I didn't bow down to them and that kind of thing. But this is my point. If we can get down to the ground level, dig deeper, and just try to help people understand that these are just other humans. They have problems. They have foot fungus. They have whatever it is, like anybody else, and they don't have any more right to tell you or me anything, and we shouldn't respond that way. You don't have the right to do that, that kind of thing. But if you can get that in your mindset, that these are just other humans that are seriously mentally ill, and they honestly believe once they've transitioned from your neighbor or your cousin or an acquaintance into that role of a title, that they have to, in their mind, believe that
they've ascended.
That they are the next. They have ascended, toward God.
Yes.
The next level before God.
They really think that. They think they're higher than other people at that point. And Jet, every time I go visit Ian from now on, I'm just going to be picturing the guards all having toe fungus.
Nice. Then they'll all start itching their toes.
I actually have one other thing to say about the guards, because I think it applies to the cops you get pulled over by, any government employee you run into. I think I found out a cheat code because there is this one specific guard always wants to start a fight with me, always wants to start problems with me. And one day her boss was there and I was like, listen, she always does this. It's like, I just asked a simple question and she's like always escalating. And the boss was like, not trying to listen to me, didn't care. And I was like, I'm disabled. And they were like quiet all of a sudden. Never treated me like that ever again. And she acts all pissed off when she sees me. It's like she's pissed off she can't start something with me. I was like, I'm disabled. And she was just like a little confused, like they were quiet for a second. And next time she starts trying to talk to me, she's still kind of trying to fight with me. And I was like, I'm disabled. And if I have a question, you have to actually explain it to me because I've had concussions, multiple concussions. And at the time, it's like she was like taken back, like didn't know what to say. Never treated me the way she used to treat me ever again. It's a cheat code.
Maybe there's another cheat code.
I have one more.
If I may. See, some cops out there, they're running the beat, and their idea is they're doing a job, and one of those things is to control crime and then to pick up people with a warrant. So one cheat code might be if you get pulled over, you say, hey, officer, I hope you're having a great night. I do not have an active warrant. I am not a criminal. There are no probable cause for a crime in progress. Right. So I'm just here to deal with whatever civil matter you have before you, and then we can call it a night. And maybe that will be disarming. I don't know. I mean, give that a try. You know.
Rehearse it a little bit.
Yeah.
Rehearse it with some friends.
Convert what I'm saying is to convert the criminality or the possibility of a criminal interaction into a civil one. Just say, look, here's a checklist of things that could be criminal, and I don't fit in any of these, and therefore let's settle the whatever civil thing you got going on that you're inquiring about. And maybe they'll disappear. I don't know.
I got one more real quick regarding the taxation. I would love it if more people understood that taxation is slavery. The fact is, your money is your labor.
Yes.
You traded your labor for this money. Therefore, if someone comes along and says, you need to give me part of your money, they are demanding that you have given them your labor.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people say taxation is theft, taxation is extortion.
Extortion, yeah.
Yeah, taxation is slavery. So,
well, taxation as people understand it and as it is applied is indeed slavery. However, it's voluntary compliance. And I write that in my book. Okay, so if you volunteer to agree with one of their terms, then you must comply. That's why it's called voluntary compliance. It sounds like an oxymoron, but the way it works is, if you subscribe or if you assent to any of those three terms, property, income, source, or service, then you are subject to the tax. And if you refute all those four terms, then they can't touch you. They really can't. And also, I want to read a part about labor. This is from the Supreme Court, quoted from Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations. The property which every man has in his own labor, as it is the original foundation of all other property, it is also the most sacred and inviolable. The patrimony of the poor man lies in the strength and dexterity of his own hands, and to hinder his employing his strength and dexterity in a manner which he thinks is proper without injury to his neighbor is a plain violation of this most sacred property. That's Butchers Union versus Crescent City Company. And so that strikes a nerve in me, because when you go out and you labor and you sweat and you work and you basically suffer and waste your time on a job, you should have the entire fruit of that labor. Mm-hmm. Unless, of course, that particular thing is a privileged service to the government, in which case they can excise something.
Because you agreed to it already.
Because you agreed to it. That's voluntary, right? Correct.
Well, thank you so much for the call, Jet. Lots of interesting things to think about and talk about from things you brought up. So thank you for the call, Jet. We also have Turd Ferguson on the line. Turd, you're in Pennsylvania, and what's on your mind?
Yeah, well, I have some thoughts about the conversation that was just going on, but I'll just keep them to myself for the time being. Okay. It was amateur night at the club that I DJ at. I have been DJing at on Thursday. Mm-hmm. And this was quite an interesting experience. So let me tell you, there are some young, hot females these days that want to be strippers, like some really young ones. And that's
never been true any other day.
Let me say this, because I never went to strip clubs before I became a DJ at one. But the young 19-year-old absolute stunner that I met on Thursday was, oh my God. I mean, she was incredible. And, I, for a second, I had a little bit of trouble keeping it professional, but I did.
Oh my God.
I kept it very professional.
Remember, she has a father.
Turd does not care about that.
Everyone has father that's walking on the earth. But I should say that, this young lady was robbed because there was another chick that actually won the contest. And surprisingly, she was actually an older woman. She was at least in her 30s. But she did have a very shapely body, if you know what I mean. But I really think that the young 19-year-old hottie was robbed because she had the best looks, in my opinion.
So is that all you wanted to call in about?
Well, I was just going to say that, I think she was robbed. And I'll just say this, too. John Tucker Must Die is a great movie. And I hope Brittany Snow comes back and makes the second one that's been floating around the Hollywood rumors. And
she doesn't
John
look like
Tucker.
a teenager anymore, I'm sure, but she's pretty.
I'm glad this advances the cause of liberty.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Right.
So, Turd, I got a little something for you to think about. Here's kind of the way it's so, the old lady probably had to work pretty hard compared, to the young, attractive
Well, he said
girl.
she was in her 30s.
I don't know about that.
And
I don't know about that because she had really big boobs, and I think that's why she won. But that's just my opinion.
So when I see like a really good looking girl on the side of the road broke down, I keep going because somebody's going to stop for her. But I will stop if it's like an old man or some like fat woman. I'll definitely usually stop for somebody who's like no knight in shining armor is showing up because there's no reward, right? So I'm a family man and I just care about people. So I know that the hot looking girl is going to be taken care of.
Somebody stopped on the side of the road for me when I was just like pulled over the other day.
And so anyways, the other thing too is like with waitresses, usually if like the waitress is like really hot, I don't really feel like I need to give her much of a tip because I'm sure she's getting tipped like crazy. But if it's like I'm at like a truck stop or a diner and it's like 2:00 in the morning, and there's just like grandma in there working, like she ain't working, third shift at the diner because, she wants something to do. Generally she's getting a good tip from me because she's probably struggling and really needs the money.
And I've always known that people discriminate against pretty people in a negative way. I've always known this.
Yeah, I do. Sorry.
Because I'm pretty. So I firsthand noticed it. Like people think like, everything's always working out for you. And it's like, well, maybe it's not. But anyways.
Yeah, I know. That's my point too. And look, Jay, I tip everybody equally. I don't tip based on how old or how disgusting or how not disgusting the person is. I tip based on the quality of the service that they give.
Based on how disgusting.
So I went to a restaurant the other day for the first time in a long time. We took a family member out to eat who's moving away, and my kids are a handful. And this waitress was like pissed when she saw us sit down. I could just tell.
That's not
and
good.
She didn't get anything right. And I left her. As I started talking to her about her tip. So what I love to say to waitresses is I say, hey, I just want to let you know I don't tip. And sometimes the smile just wipes right off of their face, the whole expression.
Yeah.
And I say, but I give gifts. The reason I don't give a tip is because tips are taxable and gifts are not taxable. Taxation is theft. Don't feed the parasite. Well, I said this to this lady, and she's like, 40 years I've been being a waitress. First time I've heard this. She's like, I worked in government my entire life. Are you calling me a parasite? And I says, yep,
yes, ma'am.
I sure am. And
awesome.
I took her, and I just, right in front of her, removed like $5 from the tip. Put it in my pocket.
I don't blame you for that one at all. And she sounded disgusting, so she probably was going to get like a $45 tip.
No, well, she was going to get a decent. She was going to get her service kind of sucked. She shouldn't have got any tip at all.
Yeah, I know.
But and she was kind of miserable, and she didn't like they come out with what's clearly buttery spread. I'm like, is that buttery spread, or is with seed oils in it, or is it butter? She goes, what does it matter? And my 3-year-old son goes, seed oils make your brain small.
Oh my God, I love that.
Looked right at her and said it.
Oh,
she
I love
huffed
that.
and she walked away, and she brought down little packets of real butter.
I told everyone, I've been saying that there are going to be people, just like what we were discussing with just the liberals, who they get told something and then they have to hate because the edict came down. They have to hate this. People are going to discriminate against me when I ask if there are seed oils and things. I've been doing it way longer than RFK was a candidate for president. I've been asking about seed oils, and people didn't know what I was talking about at first. But there was a day, the last day I ever went to Applebee's, because every single thing there has seed oils, and you have to really
garbage.
search. No, and I mean, like, if you go to Longhorns, you can get a burger and you can just not get the bun. That burger is going to be cooked in butter, and it doesn't have seed oils in it. At Applebee's, the burger and the steak has filler inside of it, so forget what it's cooked in. It has seed oils in it. The salsa has seed oils in it. Every single thing on the menu has seed oils in it. And so before I figured all that out, because you have to really search for Applebee's, and this was like a year or two ago at this point, so I haven't eaten there in a really long time. Well, I asked the girl, I was like, if I got a steak, what do they cook it in? She was like, it's like a seed oil. She said it, like whatever oil, I don't remember now. And I was like, is it possible for them to like not do that and like just cook it just in its own fat or in butter? And she was just like pissed. And this was like only like a year ago.
Yeah, because there's no chefs anymore.
I think that
especially like these commercial chains.
I think it's just to them it's a quote unquote dog whistle. They're like, oh, this is one of those, like RFK, this is one of those right wingers. When they hear seed oils now, that's probably what that lady freaked out at you for.
Yeah,
like, why does it matter?
Yeah, and
like, doesn't matter what ingredients you put in your body.
And I was visiting a relative who's one of these Democratic cult members. And I said to her something about she wanted to give my kids a popsicle, and I'm like, oh, let me look at the ingredients real quick. And it's like the spaceship or rocket ship popsicles, and red number 40, red number 3. I'm like, okay, I'm not giving my kids any bug-based aluminum. That's basically what red number 40 is. It's aluminum substance from bugs, and then they mash the bugs up, and it makes the dye. And she goes, "Oh, are you anti-red 40 because RFK wants to ban it?"
Yep.
I said, actually, no. I've been anti-red 40 since my sister-in-law, made this very clear to me when I let my nephews at 3 years old. I gave them each my nephew and niece. They were like 3. I gave them a regular candy cane, and the kids were like mental cases for like the next 4 hours. Like they were out of control. And my sister-in-law was really upset with me, and she kind of drilled me on these chemicals, and this woman who just hates RFK because the algorithm told her to, or the TV told her to. She's like, yeah, well, you better stock up on all your red number 3 and red number 40, and she goes on this whole list.
Because you need this color in your food.
I'm like, you do know that you probably need to have a hazmat license, to have like a kilo of that in your possession.
I also have I think it's Watson's or something is the brand. I have color drops. They don't work that well, but you can make them work in some things that they're made of all just like plant ingredients. Like the yellow, I think, is turmeric based. You can get other alternatives.
Blue is blueberries, red is beet juice.
Yeah, exactly.
Purple is grape juice. And the thing is why why these food companies, there was a guy I was listening to on some podcast, and he was like a lawyer for like Coca-Cola, Kellogg's, and what he would do is basically lobbying so that soda could be, accepted for, the food stamps. And he was saying the reason that they want to use all these chemical dyes and bug-based dyes is because when they use the plant-based dyes, vegetable-based dyes, or fruit-based dyes, the colors aren't vibrant and bright enough, and the sales go down on the product. And this was like Fruit Loops and Lucky Charms and some other things when they take and they replace the dyes, and they know because they have the numbers. So in Canada, Canada said, oh, you can't have all these dyes. European Union, you can't have all these dyes. A bunch of countries, you can't use basically all these dyes. And West Virginia just banned them. The governor just signed a banning 8 dyes and two food preservatives. And he was lobbied really hard by big food not to.
In your opinion, would you say that just bans corporations? Yeah, because the government can't ban a private person from if they wanted to use the chemicals, right?
Actually, again, the government can interact, or rather regulate the interaction between 2 or more persons. Okay, so the fact that corporations are putting this into the market, yes, the government can ban them. But if you were just making some crazy dyes yourself and you were giving them to your neighbor has a right to know and a right to accept it, or a right to delegate that acceptance or that rejection, for that matter, to the government. So if there is a power that resides in you to either reject or accept a thing from another person, then you can delegate that power to the government.
Yeah, but what if you just choose not to?
So then somebody else could, because it's a theoretical thing. It's if you could. It's not whether you choose to use that power or not.
If you make bathtub gin and your neighbor goes blind, your neighbor's going to sue you and you're going to lose your house. The corporation is protected from that liability, essentially. The people in the corporation, not the corporation.
603-283-6160. More Free Talk Live coming up. That's 603-283-6160. You can get in on the conversation with us. More Free Talk Live coming up.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
Protection.
Eleutheromania, the insatiable desire for freedom.
Filibuster. Police state.
It's the new 3-song heavy metal EP from Captain Kickass. Available now on your favorite music app or get it directly from CaptainKickass.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper with the Week in Review. This week, The Atlantic magazine in the United States published attack plans shared by Donald Trump's officials in a group chat that mistakenly included the magazine's editor. The White House tried to downplay the security blunder about plans to strike Houthi rebels in Yemen. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said someone made a big mistake. Ever since Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
Like the rest of the Trump administration, Marco Rubio said the details in the chat did not amount to classified material. But Democrats and some Republicans have argued the discussion of the timing and weapons used, along with the addition of a journalist to the group, amounted to a serious failure of national security practices. Secretary Rubio did acknowledge that the information was not intended to be divulged to the public, and that was a mistake that shouldn't have happened, adding he thinks there will be reforms and changes. Kate Fisher, Washington.
This week, Donald Trump announced a 25% tariff on all automobiles imported into the United States. The US president said the move was intended to boost domestic manufacturing, but it's expected to raise car prices for US buyers. There was an angry global reaction. FSN's Iris Spitzer has more.
The U.S. president announced the new tariffs during a televised address in the Oval Office, saying that they will go into effect on April 2nd.
And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff.
The tariffs will have an immediate impact on the U.S. car market, where nearly half of all vehicles are currently assembled outside of the country. Mexico is the top foreign supplier of cars to the U.S., and the U.S. automakers who have plants there won't be exempt from the new tariffs.
U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and U.S. Second Lady Usha Vance were forced to downgrade a trip to Greenland this week to one of the United States military bases. It follows weeks of comments by the U.S. president that America should acquire Greenland, an autonomous territory of Denmark. Ever since Caroline Malone reported on the run-up to the controversial visit.
No more trips to see a dog sledding race or historical sites for Usha Vance. Instead, joined by J.D. Vance, the pair will only head to the Peterfik Air Base, the US northernmost installation which contributes to missile defence and space surveillance. Usha Vance had been due to go it alone on a cultural exchange, but not in an official capacity, ruffling feathers, especially given US President Donald Trump has said he'll do whatever is necessary to acquire Greenland. Only 6% of Greenlanders polled would want to join the US. 84% also want full sovereignty from Denmark.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN. A powerful earthquake hit the Asian nations of Myanmar and Thailand on Friday, killing scores of people. In the Thai capital Bangkok, an under-construction skyscraper collapsed. Ever since Laura Westbrook sent this report shortly after the news of the quake was confirmed.
On Friday afternoon, a 7.7 magnitude quake hit the northwest city of Sagaing in Myanmar at a shallow depth, according to the United States Geological Survey. A 6.4 magnitude aftershock hit the same area minutes later. There are reports buildings have fallen onto their sides, roads cracked open, and the well-known Ava Bridge has collapsed near the epicenter. Across the border in Thailand, where earthquakes are rare, the powerful tremors sent residents across many cities flooding into the streets in panic. In Bangkok, a 30-story building under construction has collapsed, and that's trapped dozens of workers. Laura Westbrook, Hong Kong.
This week, France held the latest Ukraine support summit in Paris, attended by 30 countries, plus the EU and NATO. Host President Emmanuel Macron announced another $2 billion in military assistance from France for Ukraine, including missiles, drones and armoured vehicles. Everson's Ross Cullen reports from Paris.
Emmanuel Macron is hosting European leaders and the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Paris on Thursday in a summit that's being co-chaired by the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. One of the key goals will be discussions around a Franco-British plan for a so-called reassurance force of thousands of troops to be potentially deployed in Ukraine after a peace agreement. The plan has been dismissed by the US, but London and Paris are serious about the idea, with Macron saying on the eve of the conference that any Western forces invited into Ukraine by Kiev would respond to any attack on them from Russia. Ross Cullen, Paris.
And that's the Week in Review. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
The Tallahassee Zoo, which faced a major budget crisis. Luckily, they were able to get both, keep guests and animals happy and stay profitable.
And that's thanks to the zoo's new director, Maxwell Jeffries.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Good morning.
Now, what's the most profitable part of the zoo? The elephants, the tigers?
No. The gift shop, okay? Food court. But now the entire zoo is the gift shop. So you come to the zoo, you look around, you see something you like, make me an offer. I'm a businessman. I want to make people happy. You're probably familiar with the old saying, don't feed the animals.
Oh, right, of course.
Okay, well, that's old-fashioned thinking. At our zoo, you can feed the animals.
Anything you want?
Anything you want. Oats, eggs, batteries, you name it. And we also invented a new tiered membership system. So for your standard membership, you go to the zoo, you get to see the animals. For your gold level membership, you get to pick any two animals, make them fight each other. Yeah. And then with a platinum, you get 1 hour alone in the zoo. No questions asked. Yeah.
Wow.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. And we've been podcasting since podcasts began, but we're launching a new podcast anyway. Our new podcast is a 30 to 45-minute show releasing once a week, and you can find it at freetalkcast.com. It's brought to you by the same people who bring you Free Talk Live, and we'd love for you to check it out. The existing radio archive isn't going anywhere. This is just a new show designed from the start to be a podcast, so check it out at freetalkcast.com. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Jay Noon.
And Bear Arms.
In the last segment, Jay, I don't know if you'll remember. I didn't write it down, but I feel like we were on something that we had to, we came right up against the bumper music, and I felt like maybe you had more to say about it, but if you don't, it's fine.
I did have a little more to say about it, and I kind of slipped my mind exactly what it was.
Maybe we'll come back to it because it slipped my mind too. I know we were talking about seed oils and people saying they dislike things just because they hear it on the algorithm.
So incorporating, for example. Mm-hmm. So when you incorporate, what you're doing is you're taking a privilege from the state and you're essentially privatizing the profits, but you're socializing any liability that may incur in a sort of a way. So what I had said is, if you make bathtub gin and you sell it to your neighbor, and your neighbor goes blind, well, then your neighbor sues you, and you quite possibly lose your house. So you were talking about if like private, like, so here in New Hampshire, one part of our parallel economy that we have here, a black economy, is we have all these home kitchens.
Mm-hmm.
So you can, there are
that's cool.
All of these like country stores everywhere, like even Moose Mart used to they sell like the lumberjack maple mustard, Burt's maple mustard.
Burt's maple mustard, that stuff is
and
good.
it says this is made in a home kitchen, and it's not subject to any licensing requirements. Now you can't sell that stuff in Massachusetts, but you can sell it in New Hampshire. So anyways, that Allstead country store is loaded with all those kind of products. For example, kimchi, pickles, people's meat, from their farms. There's all kinds of so it's like very loose here in New Hampshire on this. And this is also why New Hampshire is really food independent. Like, have you ever seen there not be eggs anywhere in New Hampshire?
Yeah, but I live in Keene.
Okay. So you're
all of the whole city didn't ever not have eggs, but whole stores didn't have eggs, and I had to go to like 3 different stores, and then I finally found one, and no, it was not pasture raised.
So anyways, the only egg situations I've seen in New Hampshire was low on eggs are corporate chains. Same thing with lumber. When there was like a lumber crunch in 2020 and 2021 because everybody was building decks and porches because they all stopped going to work, and they started Zooming to work. All the local lumber yards had plenty of lumber, but like Home Depot and Lowe's were like basically there were many times they were without lumber. So these mom and pop lumber yards are buying lumber locally from local mills. Home Depot was sourcing it from like corporate outfits that are like up in way up in Maine, far away in Canada, wherever they got contracts for massive amounts of lumber. A lot of their lumber was coming out of Georgia. To where like the local mom and pop operations, the lumber is coming from. There's all kinds of lumber right around us. There's lumber mills everywhere, and they're making all the lumber. And same thing with toilet paper. We never had a toilet paper shortage. Well, like in New Hampshire, because a lot of it's produced here. But with the food, none of these farmers markets ran out of any kind of food, basically, that I could tell. None of these farm stands or none of these places that sell meat really ran out of food, and they were able to ramp it up. Now in 2020, like spring of 2020, Bardo Farm totally ran out of all
because of the demand.
Because people started freaking out.
Yeah.
But they were able to catch up. And the thing with eggs is like, for example, I was in a Hannaford's, not a Hannaford's, a market basket in Bedford yesterday afternoon. And the egg area was like piled with eggs. Like eggs were just piled up like crazy, and it was like limit 2 cartons of eggs, and like the cheap tortured animal eggs were $4.99, and the more expensive like premium eggs like the Pete and Jerry's, for example, were like $7.99.
Yeah, I bought $7 eggs today, but they said regenerative farm on them, and I'm gonna try to research it and see if it's true. It was from the co-op.
Okay, well, I can tell you Pete and Jerry's is true. A good friend of mine is a Pete and Jerry's producer. He's pasture raised. He's doing regenerative. This year, when he gets rid of his chickens, when the chickens go away, he's bringing in cows, for example, that'll graze, and then
so like rotating.
Yep. So he's just rotating the pasture, and he's got a couple hundred acres of hay fields right around him, but he's got 50 acres fenced in around his 20,000 hen chicken.
Sam Dodson, who used to be on this show, he posted the other day that he did some research on not Pete and Jerry's, but this other very popular brand. I don't want to say the wrong one. I was about to say the brand name, but I don't want to accidentally say the wrong one and be like lying about them. So you can find him at Off the Lifeboats. Dang it, I forgot what it is. You can probably find Sam Dodson if you Google him, because he does a show on Twitter, and it's like Off the Lifeboats. Dang it, I forgot exactly what it was. But anyways, he posted on Twitter. He bought from this popular brand that says pasture raised, and he did research based on the information on their packaging that's like kind of like esoteric, like just codes and stuff. And he found the location that they apparently raised their chickens, and he like goes to Google, and you can see it's like he's a farmer now in Texas, and you can see that it has the chicken mills there. Those chickens are not pasture raised. They have some kind of workaround. They're lying.
Yeah, there's a lot of line go. But anyways, back to the bathtub gin. So I digressed a bunch. But so if your bathtub gin kills your neighbor's going to sue you. And if you're putting chemicals in your products and it makes your neighbors sick, and I think we're going to see this happening with like a lot of these weed grows, because the problem with like people growing marijuana in places like Massachusetts, where there was a textile mill where your house is now, 250 years ago, all that ground is like totally contaminated with like cadmium and lead, and people are growing all kinds of weed on it, and then they're just extracting it and distilling it, and all of those heavy metals are in there. So a lot of this cannabis is testing very high for cadmium, lead, arsenic, especially if you like are going to like, oh, I found this old apple orchard, I'm going to cut up all these apple trees and now we're going to grow stuff in there. Well, apple orchards are loaded with arsenic. It was a pesticide that was put on all the apples years ago. But if a major corporation, if somebody who's incorporated sells a product that makes the end user of the product blind, the corporation gets sued and maybe has to pay some kind of penalty, or maybe the corporation goes bankrupt and goes out of business. And then what happens is when the bankruptcy happens, whoever won the lawsuit probably doesn't get any money because there's all these other people in line first, whoever it may be. I don't know exactly how that works. But the people who own and run the corporation, usually nothing happens to them, kind of like Enron.
Like personally.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you incorporate and
I do want to say, I'll answer your call in a second, Sarah, because I know she has trouble finding out when we're live.
So when you incorporate, you're getting a privilege of essentially the liabilities are going to are dispersed among the people, because when the corporation fails, and a lot of these corporations, like the way like people are setting up all these houses and stuff, is the property management company owns a desk and a computer, and then the management company manages these, property is owned by, this lease Trust A, and other properties Trust B, but they're all basically were bought by the same guy or the same family, and they're just, keep on setting up all these trusts and corporations, LLCs, to protect themselves from liabilities, and everybody is so afraid to operate. Like people like, oh, I would never go operate I'm trying to convince a guy to landscape with his kids, and he's like, well, I looked into it, I got to set up an LLC, I got to get this kind of insurance, I got to do this, that, and the other thing, all this government paperwork. I'm like, just go mow your neighbor's yards and put your kids to work. And they're like, oh, there's too much liability, I can't do that. They're afraid to do that, so they're going to keep on working their corporate job, going to their cubicle, and the kids aren't going to learn any skills as far as I'm concerned.
Definitely not in school.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah, you're on Free Talk Live. Sarah, what's on your mind?
Yes. You told me that you were alive. Okay, one day I was making a left, and then I was looking for the little symbol that does the U arrow and the left arrow. And then
for U-turn.
Be there, and it got replaced by do not turn left on the red. And I'm like, what is that about, right? So I said, I called the mayor's office, and I said, you got to be kidding. I said, how is that going to help somebody stop 5 cars turning left on the red? Okay, so then the next day, they have another sign up, and it says, turn left only on the arrow. And I'm thinking to myself, well, how is this sign better than the other sign? Because it doesn't matter. They're always going to have 5 cars turning a left on the red. And I thought, well, the red light is supposed to mean that you're supposed to stop. So why are they having these signs up when nobody follows any of what they told me to do? Red light, this sign, that sign. It's just ridiculous. So I just want to talk about how stupid Albuquerque is.
You're right. Albuquerque is stupid, for sure.
I just feel like it's like, well, Sarah, just you are the one who thinks that people are going to follow things just because there's a law. So if people are going to follow things just because there's a law, why is that any different than just because there's a sign? In
all city areas I've observed, and I literally just drove cross country with my kids.
And I agree about Albuquerque. It's my least favorite place. The ghettoest place I've ever been.
So in all the cities, the city areas, especially the poor areas, the ghetto areas, the downtown areas where the low-income housing is, where they're subsidizing poor people like crazy, and even in Mexico, like, Like when the light turns red in Mexico, like everybody just keeps going, and literally until the guys, you got to start driving the other direction into traffic. You got the green light, and they just keep on coming. Like so Mexico is just like I don't know. The driving is pretty poor.
Scary.
And yeah, it is a little scary. But in all these cities, like Tucson, I did a little time in Tucson and then Phoenix. But just city
Phoenix
people
also is up there for ghetto.
But city people in general are just in such a rush, and they're just cutting everything, and I mean, I was really impressed with some people's ability to like maneuver their way away from accidents because. I was like, oh man, that guy's getting smacked. But the other guy, he just slowed down, even though the guy that like had the right of way, technically, if he plowed into the other guy, probably would have been okay. But he's probably like, well, I'm just going to slow down because this guy here is just not stopping. But yeah, there is definitely a lot of people who do not know how to travel safely. For sure.
In Boston, I just really think everybody's on drugs. That's how they drive.
Yeah, and Boston's always been insane for travel. New Jersey, Connecticut, and like my wife does not like driving in like those high stress situations.
Seriously, I don't like driving much at all. But on top of that, driving in a city is so much worse. Like a big city.
Well, the thing is, and then I met two of my neighbors that were illiterate. They can't even read.
Do they have driver's licenses?
I do not know if they do or not. And then I know that my friend Lonnie's uncle, he's illiterate. He's 45 years old, and his older sister, she's 78, has to read his letters.
Wow.
And so this writing that says turn left only on arrow, it's not going to help nothing because they can't read the green, yellow, and the red light or the pictures. How are they going to read the letters?
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, Sarah, because in New Hampshire, apparently, maybe this is not an actual bill, but just something they were discussing in the New Hampshire State House, was the idea that people who don't speak English are getting driver's licenses here. And there was this New Hampshire state rep who's a Democrat who was saying, that's racist to insinuate that you need to speak English to have a driver's license. And somebody was posting all these signs that have, like, complicated explanations on them, like kind of like the sign you described. And it's like, how can you expect someone who doesn't know English to know what this sign means? And I was like, that is a really good point. Like, do I think the government should be like going after them?
Right. Well, that explains why they're doing both ways on a one-way street here. That's what this guy told me. If you're on a one-way street, look both ways.
And those signs have arrows.
Assume, because most people can't read because they only speak Spanish, and the sign is in English. You're right.
I'll tell you what. When I was in Acapulco, I noticed a handful of Americans driving the wrong way down this particular one-way street.
It makes sense if the signs are in Spanish and you don't know Spanish.
And
yeah.
I don't know if they're Americans, but they were white.
Yeah.
And it says Spanish. Whatever, do not enter a wrong way or something. And
in Texas, it's genuinely a big problem that there are tons of like illegal aliens that every year that kill people going up the ramps onto highways the wrong direction.
Yep. And actually, I think the one guy that was doing it was British. And I ran into him and I said, hey, was that you driving your car the wrong way? He's like, oh, man. He goes, I'm really bad with that around here.
Not only is he used to the left side of the road, but doesn't speak Spanish. Yeah. I don't see that. That's why I'm saying it's not racist of me to say that it is concerning to think of people not speaking English and being in a car on the roads around us around here. It's a little concerning. Because it would concern me if I was a Mexican and I'm in Mexico and there are people who only speak English driving the wrong side, driving the wrong direction on the road. That would concern me too. I don't know what the solution is, because the thing is, like, do I think there should be road pirates going around pulling people over and asking them if they speak English or if they have a license? No. So. Yeah,
but how do you take a driver's license written in Spanish? Is that how they get their license?
I have no idea.
So that's definitely an option in Colorado, because I actually got my driver's license in Colorado when I was, and they literally asked me if I wanted a Spanish or a English, application.
Well, Interesting.
That was also like 30 years ago.
I wonder if people who are just simply illiterate can get their license. Like, I would really like to know.
I know a guy who's dyslexic, and he was able to bring in an advocate with him who was his mother, actually. And kind of like she was saying, a 45-year-old guy's got a 78-year-old dad reading him, all his mail and stuff. And the dyslexic guy, I knew who he was. I knew him pretty good. He could read if he wanted to. He just never had to. I believe it was more of a laziness thing than anything. I don't think he was actually dyslexic. I think he didn't have to read, so why should he?
Wow.
Kind of deal.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just kind of dysfunctional. It's another story about this older sister. She's 78. This man is 45, doing drugs, bringing girls over to get sex for drugs and all this. So she's like, oh, I had to call the cops on here. I got to get rid of it. And then she leaves the sliding back door open so he could come and go as he pleases. And I'm like, how are you going to get rid of him? But they're stuck in that role. She's the older sister, and he's the baby brother. He's the youngest of the family, and she's always been his caretaker. So, but sometimes you got to change the locks. You got to lock the door so he can't go in out.
It's a common thing that people will just be enablers to their family because they love them, and even if they're doing something that their family members know are wrong.
My grandmother enabled my crackhead uncle right up until his death. She let him, rock up all her money, and he killed himself doing it, quite literally.
Oh my God!
In the end,
yep.
he did $40,000 of her money in like 65 days.
Wow.
$700 a day was the limit on her ATM, and she just let him have the card.
Oh my gosh, that's so sad.
Yeah, well,
that legitimately is a thing that happens all the time with people who are drug addicts, and they're like especially elderly family members who just for some reason can't find it in their heart to say no to them, or I don't know what else it is.
Yeah, and well, also when you're half you sort of got like dementia, and your brain don't really work right, and
you're on drugs.
And when
legal drugs, even
when you're essentially someone who's elderly, and this you got like one grandson or son or whoever giving you all this attention, telling you everything you want to hear. Yeah, I can't believe how many stories where the crackhead grandson goes and moves in with grandpa, and he's there for 4 months, and grandpa dies, and all of a sudden everything in the will is all of a sudden changed to the crackhead son, and the crackhead son basically burns through the entire estate long before the other relatives can get anything done to sue him. Oh yeah, I got a friend who's a probate lawyer. He tells me all about these things. It's insane.
That is really messed up. And how are you supposed to explain it to, or prove it? Because the old guy might have just decided to give it to the crackhead uncle.
And usually that's what happens. This probate lawyer said, he goes, whoever is there taking care of that guy for the last few months, and like he had said that there was one particular case he had worked on where there was like 15 heirs, and the will was redrawn like 13 times in 5 years.
Whoa.
And each time it was redrawn, everything was given to the guy who was there at the time. And it was just helping him out for a few months.
Do you have any special takes on driver's licenses, considering we were talking about, what can and can't or maybe should and shouldn't be licensed. And when somebody is, I know you say traveling, then are they dealing with other people? Because you kind of are.
Well, the driver's license, in my opinion, is a constructive fraud. And the reason is because we've always been traveling on the road since the beginning of time. And the driver's license came up with, like 100 years ago or thereabouts, with this concept of regulating motor vehicles. And so the term of art motor vehicle, I believe it's at 18 United States Code, Section 31, and it's defined as a mechanical contrivance operated on the highway for commercial purposes.
Wow.
Okay, so why doesn't the courts interpret that specific code and give application to which is give it the proper application, which is for commercial purposes? If you're not moving goods and persons and property on the highways for a fee or for a profit, you really should not be
required
to have a license because the license is really it's not for you to engage in traveling and seeing other travelers on the road. It's for you carrying goods and persons in your own car and charging them for it. Okay, and so that's the whole term under the term of transportation, which is the removal of goods and persons by a carrier. All right?
Yeah.
Carrier is one that carries for hire.
And carrier is different than a courier?
I think they're the same. They may be related, but they're definitely related. I don't know the nuances, but we'll just call them the same for now.
So you can call in 603-283-6160. More Free Talk Live coming up. Get in on the conversation with us. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Was Santa generous? I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. You can sell gift cards you're not using at cardcash.com and giftcards.com, where you can also buy discounted gift cards for almost anything. If you're planning a major purchase, consider buying now because prices are rising. And if you see PMI on your mortgage statement, that's private mortgage insurance, which you can cancel if your principal balance is below 80% of your home's value, which it may now be thanks to inflation. Ever since the COVID shutdown, we've been suffering supply chain issues, and nothing is in shorter supply than what you see in the mirror. The help wanted sign is everywhere, so ask your boss for a raise. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. At least 144 people have been killed and more than 730 injured after a major earthquake hit Myanmar and neighbouring Thailand. Myanmar's military government has warned the death toll is expected to rise. Dozens of people are trapped, including construction workers in Bangkok, where a high-rise that was under construction collapsed. Evasion's Laura Westbrook reports.
On Friday afternoon, a 7.7 magnitude quake hit the northwest city of Sagaing in Myanmar at a shallow depth, according to the United States Geological Survey. A 6.4 magnitude aftershock hit the same area minutes later. There are reports buildings have fallen onto their sides, roads cracked open, and the well-known Ava Bridge has collapsed near the epicenter. Across the border in Thailand, where earthquakes are rare, the powerful tremors sent residents across many cities flooding into the streets in panic. In Bangkok, a 30-story building under construction has collapsed, and that's trapped dozens of workers. The quake prompted Thai Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra to declare a state of emergency in Bangkok, where some metro and light rail services have been suspended, but the airport is operating as normal.
A US judge has ordered the Trump administration to preserve messages that were part of a group chat on the app Signal. Officials, including the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, accidentally included a journalist in their discussions about airstrikes in Yemen. US District Judge James Boasberg has ordered the preservation of the messages that detailed attack plans on the Yemen-based Houthis group. It follows a lawsuit filed by a left-leaning group, American Oversight, demanding clarification on whether the officials violated federal record-keeping laws. Ukraine's president says the United States is constantly changing the details of a proposed minerals deal. The new proposal reportedly offers no long-term security guarantees for Ukraine, but ties it to a joint investment fund from the income of all its natural resources. Evasion's William Denslow reports from Kiev.
US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has suggested this minerals deal could be signed as early as next week. But while noting that he's not necessarily against the proposal, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said Thursday that Washington kept changing the terms of what he calls a major new deal. The current plan reportedly contains no security guarantees for Kyiv, something the country has repeatedly called for. But the US maintains that an economic partnership and increased footprint in the country would act as a deterrence against Russia.
Britain's King Charles has cancelled public engagements this Friday after experiencing side effects from his cancer treatment. He spent a short period in hospital on Thursday for observation. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number you can call. That's 603-283-6160. We encourage everybody to call in who has anything you feel like talking about. You can change the subject. You can tell us what you think about what we're talking about. It's up to you. It's Free Talk Live. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Jay.
And Bear Arms.
And we do have a caller on the line, so I'm going to go to the phones. David in New Mexico, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Surprise.
Hey, David.
Hello, David.
Hey. Oh, Secret Asian Man. Who's the Secret Asian Man?
How's he secret?
I go by Bear Arms because that's one of my things in life.
Multiple people on this show have names that they go by that maybe aren't their government names.
No,
yeah,
nom de
they're
guerre.
not Asian, so they don't have a cool song.
Is that a... I don't know. Were you referencing a song? I'm sorry, I don't know.
Bonnie's too young. Tell her, Jay.
I mean, too young to understand Secret Asian Man? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Is that a song
it is
that you know about?
It was in some, it was like some movie. It was definitely, I've heard it before. I don't remember
Austin
hearing
Powers
it on the radio,
or something?
but
It's like that thing about there's a bathroom on the right. Secret Asian Man.
No.
Do you know it?
No, I have no clue. But anyway,
Secret Agent Man. It was a song, and then what is it? TCR.
Then there's a parody, is what you're saying.
A Bad Moon. No, it's not it's not really a parody. It sounds like that's what they're saying. It sounds more like Secret Asian Man than it does Secret Agent Man.
Did you
say more like
it's agent and Asian? I get it. Yeah, it's a common mix-up. Yeah.
Right.
CCR, as in
what?
CCR.
Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Okay, yeah,
that's their song.
No, Bonnie. Creedence Clearwater Revisited.
I think you're lying. I think I was right.
No, that's a cover. That's a cover band, Bonnie.
Oh, okay.
You're too young.
All right. Well, good one.
Yeah.
Of course it was. I said it. And by the way, turds, screw them 19-year-olds. They're over the hill. Bring on the 16-year-olds.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Pretty sure they're not allowed to be in that place. Is that really all you wanted to talk about, David? You don't have anything?
Of course not. Of course not. Taxes, law.
Yeah.
So let me get out my notes here, and I have damn phone. So filed under law and under tax. So there is. You were talking about the payment due. Well, actually, you didn't. It was alluded to. But let me save that for a minute. Do you know Ann Vandersteel? First of all.
No.
I've heard of her.
Okay, so she said I saw her on it was a radio broadcast and a podcast. So she's definitely being public about it. She claims to have filed an IRS Form 56 for one of two things. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
I don't know what that is. I'd have to look it up. But what's her idea? What's her theory?
That's what I'm telling you. So she filed an IRS Form 56.
Uh-huh.
And somebody knew it. That revocation of election, I believe, is what the form is called.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
Yeah.
What do you know? What revocation of election?
I've heard of it, and
So basically, you elect to be subject to their jurisdiction by unknowingly or knowingly, signing documents and agreeing to do service and stepping in jurisdictional traps or word traps. And this is Brandon Joey Williams talks about this. One stupid F letter CK.com is his website. I'm not going to say the four-letter word.
Bad idea. Anytime you want to make a website, maybe don't make it not FCC friendly.
People memorable that way, Bonnie.
But it is very memorable. Brandon Joey Williams, and he talks about.
I actually couldn't remember it earlier. Just saying.
Right, and I couldn't remember it earlier.
I thought it was
either.
called whattheF.com.
And So he talks. So he does a 45-part presentation on getting yourself out of this federal system and how it works. You're not actually getting yourself, and you're actually engaging in a lot of stuff with them. I find it very complex. I don't really like it, but he does talk about the Form 56. There's multiple Form 56s. I think there could be nearly a dozen of these forms. There's a whole bunch. There's these other guys that do very similar thing. Brandon Joey Williams is talking about, which I'll call secured party creditor process, where they use a Form 56, where they actually take the Form 56 and they use this to file essentially like 1099s on judges and prosecutors after they discharge the cases, which is really complex stuff. I don't really recommend anybody do this unless they like very much study it and understand it. Guys like Brandon Joey Williams, who are hyper intelligent and able to really focus on things, seem to be have this ability to do this. But yeah, so the Form 56 revocation of election is how you get yourself out of the IRS system, according to Brandon Joey Williams and a whole bunch of these guys. Get yourself out of the whole federal zone.
And
now,
this Ann Vander Steel lady saying the same thing?
Sounds like it, but guys like Gronsky will say don't even go there, or you don't need to do that, and I agree with them. But like I said in the beginning, there's multiple ways to skin a cat.
What about you, Bear Arms? Do you agree that with the Forms 56? Dang it, Form 56s?
I don't
think that's a good way to go?
No, I've heard of this term, this revocation of election, and I've studied it to some degree, and I don't give it any credit. And the reason for that is under the definition of what a taxpayer is. All right, a taxpayer is a person who is subject to any portion of the internal revenue tax. That's the definition. And if you're reading that definition, you should have questions about it, because that's a logical tautology. It's a logical fallacy. That statement, right? That's like saying a brown bear is a bear that's brown. It doesn't tell you anything. It's just saying a taxpayer is someone who's subject to the tax. Does that tell you anything? No, it doesn't. So
yeah, it means it's not me.
No, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true, because you have to look at that statement very carefully and understand that a taxpayer is one who is subject. All right, and that's the key term, subject. Now the question is, who makes you subject? In other words, I can write, say, Bonnie a 1099 right now. If I had her social security number, I'd say, hey, I paid her $1 million, and the next thing you know, the IRS will be coming for Bonnie for their cut, right? But that's fraudulent, because I have introduced information which is fraudulent and erroneous, but I've made her subject. I've subjected her to be a taxpayer, and this is how the whole thing works. If the company that you work for, let's say you work for Wally World, okay, or you flip burgers at McDonald's, and they subject you to the internal revenue tax, what have you become? You've become a taxpayer, even though you've been fraudulently subjected to that burden. Okay, so it's very important that you don't elect to get out of this system. Someone put you in there. And
that's why it's important in your mind to always file.
If you are being falsely accused of a crime, and you don't say anything about it, what's going to happen? You're going to be convicted, right? That's why they call it an information return. If you look up the word information in the law, it means facts that evidence a crime. That's the word information. So the IRS uses that word. They say, hey, you get these information returns, and if you don't refute the information return when it is refutable and when it is fraudulent, or if it's erroneous,
then they can
do whatever they want. It's like saying, listen, I could walk out the door here and say, I don't know, Jay hit me. He assaulted me. And the cops come and they're coming after Jay. Would it help for Jay to fight the cops? No. It would only help if Jay said, look, he's bearing false witness against me. And he has to point that finger to the source of the false bearing of witness.
So I internet searched Form 56, revocation of election. It says, you may use, and this is IRS website, you may use Form 56 to and says bullet, provide notification to the IRS of a creation or termination of a fiduciary relationship under Section 6903. And then there's all kinds of different revisions of this form that you can look at. There's PDFs, all about Form 56F. So there's like an A, B, C, D, and G.
Yeah.
And some of these might be totally changed, but they're constantly changing stuff around. But I've been hearing about this Form 56 for years. Brandon Joy Williams, if you can just take his course. It's actually on YouTube. If you YouTube Brandon Joy Williams course, I've listened to I think 13 of them, and I'd actually need to start listening to him again because I wanted to get through. But it's like 45 minutes each thing, and he's got like 47 different parts to this, so it's a lot to follow. And I listen to a lot of stuff like this anyways when I'm working and doing things. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. Basically, the Form 56 is basically telling the IRS to F off, for lack of a better, you're terminating the relationship with them. You're terminating a termination of fiduciary relationship, and that's the only. And as far as he's concerned, that's the only way the IRS or the federal government essentially knows that you're terminating a relationship with them.
So
that's the document.
So the point, the analogy I'm making is you can fight the IRS all you want. You can tell them everything that we're not a part of your system. I want out. I want to terminate. But that's not the question here. The IRS is not making you subject to the Internal Revenue Code. Someone else is. The person who bore false witness against you is subjecting you to the IRS code. And
so in your mind, basically, you'd be accomplishing almost the same thing, but instead saying in your
rebuttals.
Yeah, and what is that called? In your filing, when you file, you'd be saying, yeah, I didn't make that much money. In fact, that's a lie.
And in fact, that person's alive. For example, like I said, if I cut you a 1099 and said I gave you $1 million, what would you say? Would you fight the IRS, or would you write the IRS a letter and say, hey, Bear Arms bore false witness against me?
Oh, so that's how you did it. You didn't file back.
Yeah, it's not exactly a file. And also, keep in mind, the more complicated these procedural things get, the more likely you're stepping into their jurisdictional trap. And so what I say is keep things simple, right? You weren't subjected to the internal revenue tax lawfully and voluntarily. And like if you join the Army, then you become subject to the internal revenue tax because you got internal revenue.
And you voluntarily did it the whole time.
Right. And the whole time the Army can always come back and say, yes, we issued you a W-2 at the end of the year, and you received this much remuneration for services, right? They could put all those words together, but a private payer cannot do that. All right? They can't come to me, and you can't say, Bonnie can't say to me, well, I did service. I didn't do service. He's not a service recipient. By the way, a service recipient, right? 26 U.S.C. 6041A. A service recipient is considered a quote-unquote person under Section D of that same section, subsection D, and that is a person, and it includes a government, agent, unit, or instrumentality, right? So if somebody who's giving you a 1099 is not a government unit, instrumentality, or an agency, they're not a service recipient.
You're saying it only includes those three types of quote-unquote persons?
Yes.
Wow, that is pretty... Yes. That seems pretty concrete. Wonder what Skeeter is thinking about that.
Yes. And
still listening.
And the word includes is actually defined in the Internal Revenue law, all right? And it's very specific. And the word includes, okay, imports a general class, some of whose particular instances are those specified in the definition. That's Hovering versus Morgan's Inc. You can read about that, but basically the word include is inclusive. It excludes everything else.
Wow.
Whereas the word including may include those things that are not included but of the same class.
Wow.
For example, I can say Zoo animals includes, or rather, zoo animals including monkeys, bears, and tigers.
And we understand you mean there are others, but we're talking about those three.
We're talking about those particular zoo animals, but that does not include, say, dolphins, porpoises, and seals because they're not ordinarily found in a zoo. See what I mean? So including and includes is an extremely important concept, and that you should read about. And I've written about it. So go look up those cases. Hevering versus Morgan.
Is that what like Skeeter was trying to get you to talk about?
Yeah,
earlier?
he wanted me to talk about that because he knows that the average person will be tripped up by it and they won't be convinced right away. But like I said, I got 3 Supreme Court cases, actually 4 Supreme Court cases, and the IRC code itself cited in the literature on page 9 of the lawfultaxavoidance.com PDF. You can read about it and study it because that's the first word that you ought to learn if you want to learn anything about how legal construction works.
And I would say, like, I bet people maybe have had success with the other thing just simply because one thing I've noticed about the government is sometimes just simply pushing back makes them say, I'm not wasting my time on this. Yeah.
Right. It's not worth it. However, if you're Roger Ver, you got hundreds of millions of dollars at stake, then they want to make an example out of you, and they're going to push as hard as they can, which means you have to fight as hard as you can, right? I mean, when I was charged with carrying a gun without a license, the DA was hitting me as hard as they can. They literally were.
Yeah, because it was also lawfare. And I'm sure the DA where you are is a woke libtard. He's quite possibly a Democrat, hates guns.
It was Massachusetts.
It's not only personal hatred towards me, I believe. It's also setting an example so that other people don't do the same thing.
They said that to Russell Bricht.
Right, because if you prevail, that opens up like the Atlantic Wall. It's like after me, bro, and then we charge that wall and everybody's free. You know? And it's the same thing with the tax issue. And I'm not the first one. I can't take credit for that. This whole thing was set up a long time ago, and I've referenced Pete Hendrickson in my studies here, and some other people as well. But in terms of breaking through the wall that is the Internal Revenue Code, we the people have done it. We know the knowledge. We have the knowledge. The next thing that you need is just to have a little bit of courage and study it well and do it for yourself. And if everybody does it, we would have a free country by the end of this tax filing season.
All right, I encourage as many people as possible to just not file as well, and I've gotten at least like 3 or 4 people do it. What were you going to say, David?
Yeah, the time is now, and hopefully, I don't want to go down the track of Trump, but hopefully he might actually follow through on some of the noises he's been making. Because frankly, the whole income tax thing needs to go at the federal level, and then the state level just leave. That's another question. But start with the federal level. There's no reason that we the people want or need or benefit from an income tax. It's the only people that benefit from it is the criminals that run the Ponzi scheme, where they run the casino and they skim off money. And having an income tax helps them to do their skimming.
I'd have to disagree with that, and I'll tell you why. Because when we look at legislation, first of all, it's presumed to be constitutional.
First of all, sir, let me define which aspect are you disagreeing with?
I'm disagreeing with revoking or getting rid of the income tax, because if you understand the income tax properly in the way it is written, it is actually a very beneficial tax. And the reason is this. If the income tax, the tax on federal income, were applied constitutionally, then only those who work for the government will be taxed. That does 2 things. First of all, those who don't work for the government will not be paying a tax. That shrinks the government by 80% right there. Secondly, it costs the government an extra 20% to hire their own labor, because those people would otherwise work in private industry and not have to pay a tax. And thirdly, with respect to corporations, which on whom the tax is actually due, the corporation would operate in such way as to hire more labor and more productive assets and buy more productive assets in order to avoid the tax. And that makes them more efficient and more accountable to their customers and to their own laborers. Those are all positive aspects of the internal revenue tax if applied properly. The problem is that we, the people, are ignorant, and they think that the tax applies to them when it never did. And that's my big problem. Go ahead.
Okay, agreed. Let me restate then. Eliminate the bastardized form of the income tax to which the.
How about we eliminate ignorance? Because that's the real source of our servitude.
Sir. Let me finish what I was saying. Now that you interrupted me, I got to start all over again. Then I'll shut up, which I'm very good at because I proved it. I shut up for 10 minutes straight.
Sometimes we talk over each other. It's fine. Just go ahead and restart.
Quietly listened to you as you had the floor. So what I was saying is, then let me restate my statement and essentially say what you are saying, because the average person in the nation, the people that you need to engage in order to make it happen, because it ain't going to happen with just you and Yorn. You got to get the people behind you or it won't happen. And they don't understand it as you understand it. And I was referring to as the common man understands the income tax, that needs to go. And now is the time to make it go. And I'm essentially, to restate myself so that we're perfectly clear, I'm essentially saying the same thing as you. I simply did not include the technical law that you understand, that literally, essentially, nobody else understands when referring to we the people in general and in common. Sir, over, you have the floor.
Well, can I say something? I want to say, I don't like this idea that people bring up a lot where it's like, well, nothing good can happen unless we get all these freaking Cheeto eating, couch sleeping, TV watching people to understand that will never happen. That will never happen. And that's why we need to break off from them and make our own place to live and just start to exit. Exit.
Well, yes and no.
One thing that the
I don't need
Supreme
Texans.
Court teaches us is that constitutional rights are personal and they cannot be vicariously exercised, which means we have to do this individually as one person at a time, okay? And the idea is to get enough people to do it and get enough people to understand it so that the majority of people know it enough that there will be no such thing as a jury that would convict on someone who is not subject to the internal revenue tax.
And that's why I think we need to get rid of the Department of Education
Exactly.
badly. That's what always my point, that we will not have fair juries as long as we have the Department of Education, because other people around are being... Most people that you run into, most people you see at the grocery store, they have been indoctrinated since they were a child into believing in the supremacy of the corporation that is going to be the ones that your judge works for.
Yeah.
And the judge won't admit that. I asked them. They said, I don't represent anyone.
It's a hard... what you're saying, first of all, I agree with what you're saying. And I have also lived this, so I know it's very hard to convince people of even very simple things, right? Like the fact that the federal income tax is merely the tax on federal income. That is a very, very simple statement. Everybody can understand that. It's only 3 words. But even so, most people don't want to think even that much. And there lies our problem. Because you know what George Carlin used to say? The American people want nothing else but to be entertained. They want to be entertained, and that's it.
And that's my big problem with internet devices and kids. You especially a pre-6-year-old, and the best return on investment, to invest in your kids is before they're 6 years old. But you put an internet device in front of them, it programs them to be addicted to the entertainment of the device. It sets them up for the bread and circus for the rest of their lives.
Agreed. I think we all completely agree on that. Thanks for the call, David. It's been Free Talk Live. You can visit lawfultaxavoidance.com. You have something, your YouTube.
You can check me out, jnoon.com. You can contact me there or donate crypto to me if you like what I'm doing.
Check us out at freetalklive.com. Thanks for listening. Peace.
Sweet.
Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if we get enough supporters, we may enable members-only chat. This new subscription method is a great way to decentralize our direct listener support away from just Patreon and also support a libertarian-run business, Odyssey. Please visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join to subscribe to our Odyssey channel and help support spreading our message around the planet. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join today.
How many lawyers does it take to change a light bulb? None. They'd rather keep their clients in the dark. There are too many lawyer jokes to count. However, there are some lawyers with more noble intentions. At the Institute for Justice, we bring the light to our clients. We are a non-profit public interest law firm with clear values and principles. At IJ, we fight for those whose most basic rights are denied by the government. Visit our website today at ij.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Coming up next after the news, Hour 1 of the latest episode of Free Talk Live, here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper with the Week in Review. This week, The Atlantic magazine in the United States published attack plans shared by Donald Trump's officials in a group chat that mistakenly included the magazine's editor. The White House tried to downplay the security blunder about plans to strike Houthi rebels in Yemen. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said someone made a big mistake. Ever since Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
Like the rest of the Trump administration, Marco Rubio said the details in the chat did not amount to classified material. But Democrats and some Republicans have argued the discussion of the timing and weapons used, along with the addition of a journalist to the group, amounted to a serious failure of national security practices. Secretary Rubio did acknowledge that the information was not intended to be divulged to the public, and that was a mistake that shouldn't have happened, adding he thinks there will be reforms and changes. Kate Fisher, Washington.
This week, Donald Trump announced a 25% tariff on all automobiles imported into the United States. The US president said the move was intended to boost domestic manufacturing, but it's expected to raise car prices for US buyers. There was an angry global reaction. Everson's Iris Spitzer has more.
The U.S. president announced the new tariffs during a televised address in the Oval Office, saying that they will go into effect on April 2nd.
And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff.
The tariffs will have an immediate impact on the U.S. car market, where nearly half of all vehicles are currently assembled outside of the country. Mexico is the top foreign supplier of cars to the U.S., and the U.S. automakers who have plants there won't be exempt from the new tariffs.
U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and U.S. Second Lady Usha Vance were forced to downgrade a trip to Greenland this week to one of the United States military bases. It follows weeks of comments by the U.S. president that America should acquire Greenland, an autonomous territory of Denmark. Ever since Caroline Malone reported on the run-up to the controversial visit.
No more trips to see a dog sledding race or historical sites for Usha Vance. Instead, joined by JD Vance, the pair will only head to the Peterfeek Air Base, the US northernmost installation which contributes to missile defence and space surveillance. Vance had been due to go it alone on a cultural exchange, but not in an official capacity, ruffling feathers, especially given US President Donald Trump has said he'll do whatever is necessary to acquire Greenland. Only 6% of Greenlanders polled would want to join the US. 84% also want full sovereignty from Denmark.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. A powerful earthquake hit the Asian nations of Myanmar and Thailand on Friday, killing scores of people. In the Thai capital Bangkok, an under-construction skyscraper collapsed. FSN's Laura Westbrook sent this report shortly after the news of the quake was confirmed.
On Friday afternoon, a 7.7 magnitude quake hit the northwest city of Sagaing in Myanmar at a shallow depth, according to the United States Geological Survey. A 6.4 magnitude aftershock hit the same area minutes later. There are reports buildings have fallen onto their sides, roads cracked open, and the well-known Ava Bridge has collapsed near the epicenter. Across the border in Thailand, where earthquakes are rare, the powerful tremors sent residents across many cities flooding into the streets in panic. In Bangkok, a 30-story building under construction has collapsed, and that's trapped dozens of workers. Laura Westbrook, Hong Kong.
This week, France held the latest Ukraine support summit in Paris, attended by 30 countries, plus the EU and NATO. Host President Emmanuel Macron announced another $2 billion in military assistance from France for Ukraine, including missiles, drones and armoured vehicles. FSN's Ross Cullen reports from Paris.
Emmanuel Macron is hosting European leaders and the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Paris on Thursday in a summit that's being co-chaired by the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. One of the key goals will be discussions around a Franco-British plan for a so-called reassurance force of thousands of troops to be potentially deployed in Ukraine after a peace agreement. The plan has been dismissed by the US, but London and Paris are serious about the idea, with Macron saying on the eve of the conference that any Western forces invited into Ukraine by Kiev would respond to any attack on them from Russia. Ross Cullen, Paris.
And that's the Week in Review. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
This is the Onion Week in Review. Quiet and reserved temp Kevin Bright surprised his coworkers this week when they discovered that the mild-mannered 27-year-old was actually an untalented singer-songwriter.
How did I get here? It's probably a tree.
Bright, who mostly keeps to himself at work, usually spends his free time embarrassing himself at open mics across the city, and that underneath his meek and soft-spoken exterior is a terrible guitarist with no musical sensibility whatsoever.
You see him in the office, he's this quiet, reserved kid, and you would never think, oh, he's got a great voice and a wonderful stage presence, and you'd be totally right.
In other news, an Ohio Film Festival graphic designer decides to go with film reels for the O's. And getting grandma into a family reunion t-shirt is a 3-person job. The entire 144-minute cut of this week's review is available now for just $11.99 on Laserdisc. For more, visit theonion.com/newsbeat.
This is the Onion News Network.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Talk Live, talk radio that you control. That means you can call 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160 to get in on the conversation with us. And tonight on Free Talk Live, you've got me, Bonnie.
Jay, Bear Arms.
So tonight we have Bear Arms. You've been on before with us, but you haven't been on in a while. Jay, you also haven't been on in a while, but I'm pretty sure our audience mostly knows you because you've been on multiple times or many times. And I just wanted to say it's like we're not having like a interview, but we have Bear Arms on to talk about a specific thing. But you can also call in with your questions.
Yeah.
And we can talk about other subjects too. I wanted to have Jay on with us tonight because I felt like Jay,